All right. Okay, so we start off every meeting with public comment, which is 3 minutes in length, no more. For anything anybody in the public wants to bring forth that is not on the agenda for tonight, then we do the same thing at the end. So we have 2 separate public comments. So anybody like to speak to us tonight? So I see,
one hand
well,
up.
that
Get down.
Kristen Warren is going to be, it's down, so they're coming in shortly on the water bill. Anybody else? Okay, so moving on. Chief.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you again. Tonight, it's my honor to recognize 2 new hires, both Adam Kaminsky Miller and Tabitha Conway. Both started in August, complete our shift staffing. Very pleased. I'll let each of them say a little bit about themselves. You can talk to them, but I know that they're in their probationary period. Tabitha was a call member and is a resident prior to her joining the force, so that's great. And Adam comes from a family of firefighters not too far away. So we're really happy to have 2 new members. It kind of completes our staffing model for at least for now. So I think we could start off with Adam. He's on Zoom,
Okay.
and you can talk to him.
Hi, Adam.
How are you?
So Adam, why don't you, for the board, just give them a quick synopsis of who you are and your experience.
Sounds good. So my name's Adam Kaminsky Miller. I'm from Bellingham, Massachusetts. I went to a trade high school. I always knew I wanted to work with my hands. I had a family with a long length of history in the fire service. So I knew kind of the direction I wanted to take with my life. And I started right when I got out of high school on a call department, knowing that I wanted to pursue my career further in the fire service at a full-time position. And I had the opportunity to do that with Southborough. And so in the last couple of months, I've been starting my full-time career.
That's great. So thank you very much. Anyone want to say anything to Adam?
No, I don't have any questions. Welcome aboard and really happy to have you.
I appreciate that.
Same for me. Welcome aboard. Glad to hear that we've finally made it to full staffing now. Is that correct, Chief?
To replace the vacancies we had, so.
Back to full staffing. Yeah, good. Great news. Thank you very much. And thank you, Adam. Best wishes for great success in the department. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Lisa?
Adam, welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you. Informally, I guess, as you're on the Zoom. Welcome to the Southborough Department. You work with a tremendous group of people, and I wish you all the best of success, and Southborough will set you up for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Nice to see you again. I hope your first couple months have been a positive experience, and thanks for joining a great community.
Thank you.
Thank you to Adam from me, and you're joining a great fire department led by a excellent chief. I feel like I have seen Chief Kelly's a lot today. So we just got back from a ceremony where we missed a lot of promotions, which was great. So it was very nice. It was a good day for the fire department. So welcome and good luck.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Adam. Other new firefighters, Tabitha Conway. I'll just have her come up and say a few words.
Good evening. Like she said, I'm Tabitha Conway. I've been in town for long enough that I have to think, at least 10 years. I have a 16-year-old and a 9-year-old here in town in schools. And before I think I'm a mom, and that's why we're here. I am on the older side, but I've also gone through enough to know where I need to be. And this town has given so much really to the kids that it's a great way to give back.
So Andrew, I'll start down with you again.
I don't have any questions for you, but thank you. Excited. And I look forward to working with you more.
Thank you. And I have seen you around, so good to see you again. Great to have someone who is deeply rooted in the community in this position. I think that's a huge plus, and so very exciting to have that connection here. And so I again wish you great success in your career in the fire department here. Thank you.
Hi again. It's wonderful to see you again. I had the opportunity to speak to Tabitha, and such a great story you have. I think you're a wonderful addition to the department. Southborough roots are great to have, you know, to understand the community as well. And again, you work with a tremendous group of people, and age doesn't matter. So thank you for stepping forward and for doing this. So, thank you.
Welcome to full-time on the department. I know you've been around, so it's great that you're stepping into that role. And I think you're a great role model for our kids. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I did all that comment, so it's great to see a female in this position. It's great, and I don't know what you mean by I'm older. You're very. So you hide it well. But welcome and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so next is. Yeah, so Vanessa, can you bring over Kristen Warren?
Hi.
Hi, Ms. Moore. Hi, Mr. Moore. Can you see us okay?
Yes, you can. Thank you.
So thank you for being here. I'm Kathy Cook. The 5-member select board is well aware of the issue here, but just to tee it up for the public, you're here to basically appeal 2 separate large water bills. One is roughly 11,000, the other is roughly 12,000. Each were generated exactly a year apart, basically the summer season. So you just got the bill for the second one. You had the bill for last year's a while back. So we're here tonight to discuss that, and select board has the authority.
Sorry.
It's okay, that's okay. Let us know when you want us to keep going.
Thank you. Thanks for letting us zoom in. I'm sorry that we couldn't be there in person.
So let me just say on behalf of select board before we get started, we are well aware of your personal situation, which you described in the letter to us. We are totally sympathetic with your situation. We are really sorry. I don't know what else we can say, but we're really sorry that you guys are in the situation you are, and I hope your son is. And she's got, I know you guys are great parents, and I'm just sorry that you're in the situation that you are. Okay, so
Thank you.
the select board's got the authority to basically grant your request, which is to each person's going to have a chance to talk, just 5 of us, as far as what they believe you should do, and then we'll take a vote after that's done. Okay, is there anything else you want to say to us? We've got your letter. Is there anything else beyond what's in this letter that you want us to know? Is anything changed since you sent the letter?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, we've been longtime residents of Southborough. We've lived in this home for 20 years and our home before for 5 years. We did this house to accommodate our son's needs. When the first bill came through last year, we were in the ICU at Children's, and it was something we couldn't really process at the time. We were focused on other things, but we did have people come out to look. And the funny thing is, we weren't even using the system that entire year. So we just figured it was a one-off, and we were going to deal with it, whatever was fair, sorry, with you guys after. And then everything kind of reset, and we were still dealing. This has been the hardest year of our life. I'm dealing with it again. And so we are not trying to get out of anything. We're just trying to be fair and common sense of over 20 years and never having this happen, and us doing due diligence of people coming out and testing and doing things. So we appreciate the opportunity that you're giving to listen to us and for us to be part of this process.
Mr. Warren, do you want to say anything else?
Just to echo what my wife said, last 2 years ago, we really, if you remember, it was a very rainy season. So we didn't really have the sprinkler system on at all, maybe for like a month or so. So I was really surprised at that bill. And then, as we said, we had folks out to inspect the interior and exterior. So it's been a very trying year for us, and we're just thankful that you're allowing us to speak here today.
So select board's going to talk next, and then we'll come back to you, okay? So I'm going to start with Sam.
Okay. I guess I do have one question at this point. I'm curious, it's my understanding that we still don't actually have a specific problem identified. Is that correct?
That's correct. We've had
two separate
Two.
sprinkler companies come out to evaluate the system, and neither has found a leak. They've pressure tested the system, so we're at a loss at really what's happening.
and as well as a plumber, and anyone we've talked to, especially given the track record of how long we've been here, the couple things that we were like, could it be this? Could it be that? They're like, we would have to refill a swimming pool 70 times to have that amount of water. And so that's why we just felt like, okay, there's something wrong. We want to do what's right for the town that we love, but at the same point, we can't do that. So we can't swing that.
I did that calculation as well. That's a lot of water going somewhere. Have you tested to confirm that I have a sprinkler system myself, and there is a shut-off valve in the house that I can turn off the water to the entire system. Have you actually tested that to confirm that once that shut-off valve is closed, that there's no significant water drain at that point?
So when we got the last bill, we were shocked, as you can believe. We shut that off. I had this company come out to do all the pressure testing, and we shut it down at that point.
At the house.
At the house.
There's at least a mechanism in place, you believe, that can prevent this going forward.
Mm-hmm.
At the cost of not running the sprinkler system, but at least that's maybe better than not having a huge bill. So
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the weird part about it was last year, I only had the system on for maybe a month or two. If you remember, it was a very wet season.
So something strange happening there, but at least there is a fail-safe mechanism, which I think is
Yeah.
important.
Yes. Yeah.
The two people that came out to look at it were both the one we were using at the time and also the people that installed it. They did our whole neighborhood.
Right. I had the folks that this past earlier this month or October, the people that installed the system, I had them come out to go through the entire thing.
Clearly something strange is going on there, and it would be great to find out what it is. I guess, Ms. Cook, to cut to the chase here, my inclination is I'm hard pressed. I'm sympathetic to the issue. I'm hard pressed to waive the entire bill. I think that in fairness to other water customers, we ought to recover at least the cost of the water, which is the option 3, I think that Ms. Galligan had laid out for us. So I guess I'm prepared to waive the charge above the direct cost of the water for both of those bills. That's sort of where I stand at this point, but I can be convinced otherwise. I'd be interested to hear what other board members have to say.
So Mr. and Mrs. Moore, before I go to the second person, let me just clarify or expand on what Mr. Stivers has said. So Ms. Galligan, our DPW superintendent, gave us a few options that we could look at as far as trying to give you some relief here, some significant relief. And one of those was to basically reduce it to literally the cost of the water that we buy from the MWRA. So the truly out-of-pocket cost per gallon. And if we were to vote on that option, and I don't know what the other members' choice is, but if we were to do that, I just want you to know what the numbers were. So on the first bill, the odor bill, it would reduce a $11,596 bill to $4,028, so almost 2/3. For the bill that you just got for 9/22, it would take a $12,615 bill and reduce it to $4,265. So 2/3, almost 2/3 in both of those is what option 3 would do for you. Okay, so Andrew.
I agree with the approach that Sam outlined. And Mr. and Mrs. Moore, I definitely can sympathize. It's a very, very difficult situation you're dealing with. Of the most recent information that we got from the DPW, from Cabral Irrigation, that noted that did the pressure testing and didn't find any leaks, but noted there were 10 leaking heads, and they don't believe that would be the cause of something, this much water being used. But do you know anything further about those leaking heads and whether that's something that you can the company was talking about maybe coming out and replacing them in the spring? Is that something that you would consider? Because then if you did that, that would also see if that would alleviate the situation. We just don't want this situation to happen in the third quarter.
Nor do we. Obviously, we'll do whatever we can to resolve the issue, but even there were a few leaking heads out there, but the gentleman that came out said that in no way, those could not cause this big of a problem, this big of a water usage. So certainly we will try to resolve the sprinkle head issue. But the leaking was not of the volume that we're talking about.
There's no standing water or anything.
Yeah, that's the puzzling part here.
Something that we can do so that, next year, if you turn your system on, that the town could, within the first week or two turning it on, give you a reading so that if, if the first week it gets really warm and you run this sprinkler system all the time, that we know then we could get some information about whether you're using a lot of water, and then that would give you an opportunity to just cut it off.
They could read that meter themselves, certainly.
Okay.
To track that. So.
Yes, yeah, that was going to be my go forward strategy, is to turn the system on, check the meter, run the system, and see what the water volume was that was going through it.
We originally, when the first bill came out, we were going to ask to have the meter replaced, but now that it's happened twice, I don't know. We've checked with neighbors who run way more than us, and no one else seems to have had this issue. So, but yes, we would do that. We would do whatever we need to. This is literally like taking things coming down the pike here and just lighting it on fire. But we want to do what's fair. We also realize this call is being recorded, and we've talked about some very personal issues. So I hope everyone's respectful of that too. I know this is public after the fact on YouTube about our family.
Lisa?
Thank you. Good evening, folks, and thank you for coming tonight. And my sentiments are very similar to what other board members have said. I was going to suggest monitoring it. It's clearly there's something going on in the summer months that's creating this issue. I would question the meter, other than it's only happening during one quarter of the year. So I had written down to suggest, as Selectman Dennington, Select Board member, Dennington had suggested that, we monitor this through the first or second week of turning the system back on. Obviously, if you don't turn the system back on, we should still monitor it and see if there's still a problem, and maybe the system specifically isn't the problem. I'm certainly very open to providing some form of relief to these homeowners. And hopefully we can nip it in the butt before next year, so we're not faced with this same issue. But thank you for coming in, and as you said, thank you for sharing with us some of the things going on in your life as well. I'm very sympathetic to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think the only reason we did that is because it would seem as if we were irresponsible after the first time to not have done anything. And unfortunately, it was just beyond our cycles of coping right then. So, and I would like to say that the folks that we've dealt with have been very kind and accommodating to scheduling. So we appreciate everybody in the town who's worked with us on this as we got to a point where we were able to be on the call tonight.
I think we all understand, as always, families first, that always takes priority, no matter what the case is, whether it's a scrape on the knee, from a bike. I mean, family always comes first, and I think we understand that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming. I know talking about personal matters is not easy, and I appreciate you being willing to discuss that with us as well. I agree with what my fellow board members have expressed tonight. Have you asked your insurance company if you could file a claim for this?
I haven't, no.
Okay. I'm just wondering if they would be able to give any assistance to you, especially depending on where we end up tonight, just another avenue for you to pursue. And I would just ask that if there's something that the DPW department can do in terms of helping you to monitor or, put a flag so that, in case you have other things going on at this time of the water bill next year, that we are proactive in alerting you. So if you want us to do that, we can certainly talk to the DPW department, because I don't want, I don't want this to happen again. And I just want to make sure that the more eyes that we have on this, the better. And I guess my last question is it your intention to run the system, or are you just going to be turning it on to figure out if you can pinpoint the problem?
Well, we've shut the system
Yeah.
down for the season. But the goal would be to turn it on and monitor. And then, I guess we'll try to figure out as best we can based upon the usage that's happening, what we need to do. If in fact, we have to get a new system, we'd investigate doing that as well.
Okay. And you don't think that there's anything else that could be contributing to this? The only thing you can pinpoint is the irrigation.
Yeah, we're really at a loss. When it went down through the next couple quarters, obviously we're dealing with our son, and so we thought that whatever we did last year was going to resolve it, and obviously that's not the case.
But we can't think of anything else. The homeowner next to us moved out around the same time, and there had been a lot of work done on the house. We had runoff issues with it before, their house, but that wouldn't do this. And
Yeah.
so no, we can't think of anything else. And we have had plumbers, we've had the two companies. I think we would have to identify what it is before we can file a claim, but I think that's a good idea to research as well.
We can, I'll call the insurance company.
Again, we want to work together and figure out how to make this not happen again, because it's not fair anywhere. It's not fair to our fellow community members, and certainly isn't what I would want to spend money on, given everything else that's happening. So. But yes, a flag from DPW, we wouldn't turn it on without flagging to say we're going to start testing, like all of those things. I think it's really about communication and partnership as we prevent this from happening. there's enough horrible stuff in the world right now. So that water doesn't need to be wasted.
Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. So Mr. and Mrs. Moore, let me explain again why we're looking at these options. The water, providing water in Southborough is through a separate fund. It's not part of the general town finances. It's got its own P&L, its own balance sheet. It's got to pay its own bills. There's two types of cost in there. There are variable cost, which is basically the cost of buying the water from MWRA, which we pay for per gallon, and there's fixed costs, which are basically everything else. So the proposal tonight that has the least pain to you, which is what we're calling option 3, is merely to recover the variable cost so that the other ratepayers are not going to be required to pick this up. So that's why this one's on here. So I'm not sure what you think about that proposal, but that's the one that I think, if I read the room right, seems to make the most sense to the 5 of us.
Yeah, I mean, we're not looking for anybody else to pay our bills, but you know, it's still it's over $8,000 worth of water, you know, that's a lot of money, and we appreciate your ability to even break it down. I'm sorry, just 1 second.
We could consider a payment plan.
That's what we just talked about
Yeah.
here, so that's what I'm going to talk to next about.
And maybe during that time, they can check with, as Chelsea said, their insurance company as well. Maybe give them the opportunity to do that.
We're back.
Sorry about that.
Quite all right.
uh,
So
I
the other
guess-
thing we could probably offer here is a payment plan. So I think we're going to vote to lower the bills to option 3, it sounds like officially, but we can also offer a payment plan that you can work out with the town treasurer, if that would help.
Yeah, and I think we would most likely want to pursue changing the water meter just to rule that out, because I would imagine that would be something insurance would ask us about too. It just seems like that's one of the first things when there's something so bizarre out of 20 years of living here. So,
So I have no idea what the interest company's going to say, but we're trying to do everything we can to help here. And you could propose the payment plan that would work for you. So we let you say, this is what we could do to get this paid. And we would talk to the treasurer, and I think he probably would be okay with that.
And did I hear you suggest that the meter needs to be replaced as well? Or unmute?
I think we would feel most comfortable just doing that in addition to doing the testing and all of those things, because as we're ruling things out, I just want to make sure that there isn't anything else happening that's contributing to that. Every home in this neighborhood, for example, our sprinklers are in our neighbor's front yard because we actually own that. Everybody has sprinklers in this neighborhood, and I just would want to make sure there isn't anything happening somewhere and that the meter is actually accurate as well. So
I think we could do.
So we will talk to the DPW about that. I mean, eliminate all the variables you can, but certainly get you to an answer faster. Okay, so do you guys do either one of you want to say anything else as far as what I think we're about to vote on?
Oh, I guess, you know, one of the things that I just look back at the usage, you know, the highest we've ever had is 30,000 cubic feet. I appreciate the variable cost component, but we're just so much over. And I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to reduce that. That's still, it's over $8,000, you know, that we're going to be paying for water.
The biggest bill you ever had was for 2020, and I can't remember if that was rainy or not.
There was a bill there was a bill in 2020, and then in 2016, I have a printout that I got from the DPW. That was 30,000 cubic feet. The one in 2020, I think that bill came out to be like $2,100 or something like that. I guess I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do to defer some of that cost. It's still a substantial amount.
So it's twice what your biggest bill was before is what we were proposing here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking to the left at my fellow board members. Does anyone want to propose anything different than what we proposed, that what's on the table with option 3?
I'm fine with spreading it over several years if that would help to sort of even out there. But I have a hard time again with the other water customers out there asking them to subsidize the actual cost of the raw water. So
Anybody disagree with that?
I think it's hard to put the cost onto somebody else. I think that's, I'd love to be able to help more, but
It's
I
hard
just don't think it's fair to other people with water bills.
And I think it's hard not knowing what the problem is as well.
So if for some strange reason it turns out that it's a town problem down the road, if you define the problem, and it's the town's problem, then certainly I'm happy to reconsider at that point.
I agree. It's a different story.
Agreed.
So, Mr.
So-
Moore, Fiber said, if it turns out that the problem is town caused, something strange,
The meter,
we hooked into your water supply, the meter really is going crazy, whatever. Whole different story. We're assuming that the problem is your problem and not anything the town has done. So that's the underlying assumption to what we're voting on tonight.
And I would
Right.
imagine if it's a meter as well, wouldn't it be skewed on every quarter versus just?
You would think so.
one would think, but you don't.
You never know. Agreed.
There's a great value in determining exactly what the problem is,
Yeah.
which sounds like Ms. Warren's going to work on here. So-
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, so I think if we could switch the meter out, that would just allow us, as well as doing the additional tracking in the spring.
Yep.
I think that would be a great idea.
So the motion we're going to make is to make sure the meter gets switched, offer you the payment plan of your choosing. And we just had the town treasurer confirm that's okay. And then to accept option 3, which is the variable cost of the water that was used for each of the 2 quarters, those 2 bills.
So
But that's option 3.
That's option
Yeah,
3.
okay.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just if we can add in there that, if depending on what is found, it can be reviewed at a future, if we can include that in.
Because the amendment to the motion is that this is always reviewable if different facts come forth that warrant that.
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, so Ms. Moore, I'll leave and Mrs. Moore, the ball in your court to deal with Brian Valentine, who is our town treasurer. He's on, he just texted us, he knows what's going on. So work with him as far as a payment plan that works with your finances. We will talk to the DPW tomorrow, make sure that they understand that we've requested that the meter be exchanged ASAP.
Okay,
We're,
Sincerely appreciate you coming tonight and wish you the best.
thank you
very
so
much.
much, and we appreciate all that you do for our town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. There you are. Come on up, Mr. Davis.
Evening.
Nice.
Just gonna move me over real quick.
Then introduce yourself.
Yes.
officially.
Tim Davis, Recreation Director. I've not been in front of you guys in person in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Does Don want to come up? Sure, come on, you're welcome to.
You're looking a lot younger since we saw you last. The job must be doing good things for you.
So thanks for the opportunity for having me in to just give you an update on all things recreation. I'll try not to take up too much time. I'm going to focus on really what we've been doing this fiscal year, so since July of this year, which has been a good amount. So as soon as I can get it up here. We'll talk about capital, some of the capital projects that we've been able to click off the list. We'll talk about programming, obviously, kind of what we've been doing, where we're going. And then let's see, just some highlights, and then I'll get out of here. So a bunch of pictures, some slides behind you if you wanted to take a peek. So anyways, so as mentioned, so we'll start with capital improvements. Again, we're just going to focus really on this fiscal year, what we've been able to get done this summer. And then from there, we'll go on to our community programs, some special events. And the first one that I want to highlight is the CPA approved project that we had this fiscal year for the most recent town meeting, which is the Mooney Athletic Complex tennis courts. So we went in front of town meeting for CPA approval for funds to reseal, repaint, and repurpose the courts down at the Mooney Complex. They've been showing their age, as you can see on the slide, pretty drastically. We had obvious cracks. We had a lot of rust pockets popping up on the cement, discoloring. And that's just because of use, because of weather, because of age. So the purpose of that article was to get funding to take care of them, bring them back up to their appropriate life, so that they could be used to the fullest extent. So the pictures on the screen right now are the tennis court side, and this is what they look like now. So obviously a drastic improvement. Pretty jarring actually when you look back for what it was to what it is now. So same dimensions, same tennis court, new netting, new posts. We did add temporary pickleball lines on that court, as you can see in blue. So that matches the setup that we have down at the Neary Richardson tennis courts to expand the usage of that single tennis court. So pretty simple project, but with a real immediate effect and pretty drastic change. So we're really happy with that.
So that was done.
That one's done. So all of these next two are done. So that the facility in general is done.
What was the cost of the courts?
Put me on the spot, Sam. I can get you that off the top of my head.
Under budget?
A little over budget because we did change it, and I'll tell you why in a second. So on the screen right now is what the other half of the courts used to be. So some of the board members may remember in 2020, I came in front of you to have the old skate park removed. These are some images of what were there. At one time, I'm sure that skate park was wonderful, but again, with age and lack of upkeep, we decided to remove it just for safety. Obviously, you can see the items on that court were pretty much a disrepair, and we felt it most necessary to take everything out. So at first, the original ask was to just put it to a tennis court to repurpose it, but as we've been sitting back for the last year or two, we've seen pickleball climb in popularity. Our temporary lines were serving their purpose down at Richardson at Neary. But we saw this as an opportunity to bring defined specific pickleball courts to that facility. So this is what is out there now. So on that one tennis court, we were able to fit 4 pickleball courts. So because of the extra paint, the extra nets, the extra posts, we went over just by about $2,300, which Recreation was able to absorb out of their revolving account. So, but that project's completely done. The pickleball courts are being used every single morning by our group that was at Neary. That's shifted over now to Mooney. That's a small picture of our core group who have been champions of pickleball in town. So it's been fun seeing them out there every single morning. Top row, you'll just see the difference of the surfacing. Obviously on the left was the old surface, just dirty, the rust pockets popping and just deteriorating surface. Then on the right is where we're at now.
Do we have any courts that aren't in great shape now?
No, we're up to
Now
speed. Yeah, in my opinion, we're all up to speed. Great. So that was a fun one. That was a quick one. We were happy to get it done this summer season as we planned. Everything surprisingly went to schedule. So that one's done and closed out with CPA as well. The bigger one that we were able to finally get our hands on and get some shovels in the ground was Calander Field. Calander was a project that I absorbed coming into office in mid 2019. If you'll remember, Calander was a project that was approved based on safety gates, I would say, with the select board to make sure that every phase that we were going through, we were showing proof that our plan in place was going to fix the issues at hand. Those issues being significant drainage issues that there's obviously a bordering hill due to the development of the houses in the community above. that was draining off all the water onto the hill instead of draining draining off the water through the hill onto the field. And instead of the field draining it properly, it was holding it and the water wasn't going anywhere. So the task at hand was to correct that drainage and improve the surface for quality of play. And I'm happy to say that at the end of the fall, the contract this fall, where we are now, so probably in a couple of weeks, contractor will move off and we can finally say that it is done. So just some photos to illustrate what we did out there. So this is kind of the in progress photos that you'll see. So up top, on that top row, you'll see a photo. The lighter sand is the installation, the rows going down is the installation of a new drainage system underneath the surface, as well as repairs to the irrigation that was there. So even though we want to move off water, we want to make sure that the field's getting enough water to take care of the turf and take care of the surface as it is. You'll see on the bottom left, we removed quite a bit of earth to grade it properly. We laser graded the entire field to make sure that water is moving properly. So we removed, besides just phrase mowing and getting rid of the upper layer, we took a good amount off, out of the swales, off the surface, kind of all 360 around the field. And then the bottom right was our surprise, as we always get a surprise in every single project that we do. Once you dig, you never know what you're going to get. And what we found was a tell of what we think was the true issue of what was going on with the field. That bottom right, when we were digging out the swale, we found 2 dry wells that were already installed, the drainage system that was already installed, meant to collect the water coming off the hill. That was a system that was not on any of our radars, not on any plans that were provided in town to REC or the town. But what we found was, even though the system was there, the piping connecting had no pitch to it. So when these drains filled up, the piping would fill up, everything would back up. So I think it was just another tell of what was going on and why the drainage was becoming such an issue and why the water was holding for so long, simply because even though there was a system, we didn't have anywhere to put it. So instead of correcting that, we stuck with our plan. We removed the dry wells and we installed the planned system within those swales around the field to move the water. And I have a video next, and I don't know if it's going to play or not. It's probably going to be shoddy. I went out and I took a video probably 2 weeks after we established the field. And this was our first real big test, our first real big storm that was out on the field. So you can tell that the water was still rushing off the hill as it should. And this is a field that was designed to flood. I mean, it's almost like a retention basin where the water is supposed to flood the field. The issue is the water wasn't going anywhere. But when I went out there and I saw that, and I saw it was still flooding, I was like, oh boy, I'm not sure what's happening here. And I called one of my favorite things to tell all my colleagues is I called the contractor. I was standing right there and I was like, hey man, like, I'm down here, like, and I'm looking at this.
I'm
Like,
down here polishing my resume.
No. He's like, I was just there, I just missed you. He's like, isn't it great? I was like, I don't know if great's the word. And so he said, tomorrow morning, go back in the morning, take a picture and send it to me. So this was, I remember very vividly, about 1:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. And I went back Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. and that's what it was. So
Amazing.
the system was working as intended, obviously.
And this was very recently?
This is very recently. This was end of the summer. When I think our first real storm at the end of the summer, if you remember, I think like an inch or two of rain in 24 hours. The impressive part, obviously, is that the water was moving. You could hear it moving underground. You could hear it going into the corners. But the more impressive thing was if you stand on the middle of the field, you wouldn't know it was wet. So everything was firm, everything was dry, everything was moving. So this picture I took today, I went out there just to get a glimpse of what it was. So as you can tell, the grass is establishing very, very thickly. You can obviously still see some lines of where the drainage is. However, the contractor is still out there. They're still mowing it. They're still establishing it weekly. We've made some slight changes to the hill to collect the water a little more securely instead of just using earth and trusting that the earth is going to stay where it is. We kind of removed some of the new sod we put on with some drainage stone so that's more secure. Obviously, you can see the new drain on the left side. But overall, I mean, we're just thrilled with it. It's been a really fun project, a rewarding one. When I went out there that morning, I was a kid in a candy shop by myself in the middle of the field. And it just, everything worked as intended. So we're happy about it. the contractor's thrilled about it. And we're anticipating opening this in the spring. So the community is going to be back on it. We're working with DPW already to get a schedule down. Andrew from DPW is the grounds guy. If anybody's been around the soccer fields, specifically at Woodward, Tridier, or DePietri, those fields have been immaculate, and he's going to put some turn his attention to this field. So we're confident that it's gonna come. So we are very happy to check that box. Like I said, at the end of the season, that will be officially done and closed out under budget as well, which is always great. So it was good. It was really good. We're happy to have that one done. Just a reminder, as we progress, that the lights at the tennis courts are up and they're on. We're able to check the usage weekly. They're being used, especially now that the nights are getting longer, especially next week. It's going to be dark around 4 o'clock. So those lights will be probably used even more. So we're happy about those. And then obviously the lights over at Mooney at the baseball field were installed and turned on and put in full use this summer and continue to be. They just finished up their season this week. And I know they use the lights quite regularly. So everybody was really happy about it. We were really happy about it.
That's a great picture.
Thank you. I took it myself. I think that was the first night. The first night we used them, I had to be there for it.
So Tim, before we leave Clandor, can you just remind everybody, the public, how it got paid for? What was the total cost, how it got paid for, et cetera?
Yep, so it was paid for through CPA funds. The total cost was around 250, I believe. I can get you an exact, I apologize, I don't have that within me, around that. The contractor that we had, if you remember, came in very low. It's a contractor we've used before, and they really like working in Southborough, as they told me. So they were aggressive. We were happy to see them. They're the ones that did DePietri as well. So we were familiar with them. So obviously the cost rose with things increasing, but they were able to keep it well under budget. So we've yet to dip into contingency funds, anything like that with CPA. So
And this one preceded you, right? You inherited this one.
it was approved the year before I got here.
Which was 16?
Town meeting 2018, so FY19 budget. So
Okay.
long time coming, but it's done. So. And then we just have a couple future projects. Obviously, I think as of now, I've finished everything that I've absorbed. I took on when I came in, which is great. And we're kind of redirecting our focus on some things. So we just have 2 projects that we're investigating right now, starting public feedback. So nothing's going to town meeting, anything like that right now. But the first being looking at Woodward and looking at the potential of turfing that entire complex, taking advantage of the lights with the need of an 11v11 full-size field, which is 9/11, as our need is outgrowing the usage time at that field. So that is a project that we're in very beginning phases of investigating and kind of seeing where we want to go with it. Originally, I know in years past, Neary was said to be the site, but obviously there's a lot of uncertainty with Neary, with the school, with the build, the fact it doesn't have lights, just a lot to consider. And we thought that this would be the best choice given what's already there. So that is something that we are looking into actively. And then our other project would be Lundblad Field, repurposing that field. That is the field above Neary School, the old landfill that is currently just a multi-use open space. Kind of an auxiliary field, overflow field for sports teams, lacrosse, soccer, field hockey, things of that nature. So in response to the master plan, as well as just public feedback that I've been hearing, we've all been hearing for years, we're looking at implementing a dog park on that site while maintaining a full multi-purpose grass field for sports. And then you see the pathways for ADA accessibility as we are looking into the ADA access of all of our facilities. So Lundblad, again, something that we're talking about that may or may not come in the future. But those 2 projects are what's keeping us busy on the capital front.
Is Lundblad stable in terms of the underlayment there with the landfill?
It's stable as it sits. If anyone's been up there, if you're on one side of the field, you can't see the other side of the field because of the settlement.
Yeah.
So addressing within the dog park project or within establishing that field, that the underlining construction would be bringing that back up to grade, making sure that membrane that's protecting the debris underneath is proper, is sound. So making sure that the stability, like you said, of the field is just as sound as it would be a brand new feature on top.
So tonight, one of the things on our agenda is to start talking about what we think is going to be on the warrant for the spring.
Mhm.
And I had an email from Kristen that implied that you did want to put as part of this on the spring warrant. Is that not true?
We've had some changes in the last week that we still have to discuss as a commission, so I'm sure she'll follow up with that. So that was the capital piece. I'll just go over programming quickly. Obviously, programming is the bread and butter of what we do. I can't take credit for a lot that we're going to talk about. Our program coordinator, Joe, has been with us just over a year now. He's on his full cycle of seeing all the seasons, and he's taken everything under his wing and really ran with everything, introduced new programs, built upon what we had, and is just doing a tremendous job. So I'm obviously not going to go over the hundreds of programs that we do, but I'll just try to break it down as best I can. And I thought the best way to illustrate that was to illustrate where we were and where we are coming out of COVID, as that's kind of where our trajectory was, the flux of our programs and everything. So in 2020, we offered 273 activities. We had 1,100 registrations, and then on our fields, we had 6,700 hours per minute across the town. So every field accumulative. In 2021, we really started to come back, especially with the reintroduction of summer camp, the reintroduction of after-school programs, having Joe on board, starting in that fall and introducing new programs. So we were able to balloon up to 357 activities that we offered through the rec department. We were able to bring in just about 3,700 registrations. Now this is calendar year. So for the calendar year of 2021, 3,700 registrations, and then sports, as you can see, came back with a vengeance compared. So, we had just over 15,000 hours permitted across every field and facility in town. And then this calendar year, obviously, we are coming to an end, and we're seeing just about the same, kind of maintaining. So as of today, we've offered 316 activities, about 3,500 registrations. So a little less activities, but almost the same when it comes to registrations. So our programs are growing, our registration numbers are growing per program, which is wonderful to see. And then again, with our hours permitted with sports, 14,678. So, again, very, very active fields, both turf and natural grass, gymnasiums, the rec center, library, things of that nature. So very busy. We continue to grow, and we continue to stay active with programming, with activities, and again, with permitting. And the biggest number that I thought was really incredible when we pulled it was, so in 2019, we implemented our online software, our registration system. So since spring of fall of 2019, we've onboarded 4,780 members to our system. That is residents and non-residents, but it's about an 80-20 split on that one. So our pull with the community has been tremendous. Our access to be able to get the word out on new programs and returning programs has been excellent. So we were really thrilled to see that number, and it continues to grow season to season. And the other big number that I thought was important is our current average of programs that are actually running versus canceled due to low enrollment or other circumstances like change of space or something like that is 94%. The industry average across the country is a 20% cancellation rate. So we're well above that where we sit right now. So again, I think that's really props to Joe and his persistence with programs, taking a deeper look at programs and trusting data over gut sometimes, and offering things directly from feedback of the community, not so much what we think is easy. So that number is just tremendous, from my site, seeing that with what he's doing, but obviously as a take from the community, seeing that. The bigger one I want to focus on obviously is summer camp. Summer camp was something that used to not be our biggest program, but now is, I think easily is. So I just want to give you a quick run through of where we were, where we are, and where we're going this coming summer, as we're already very well planning it here in the fall. But to illustrate it is to go back to when I came into the office. Summer camp was a half-day program, split locations across town. It was unlicensed as an unlicensed program, and the enrollment was low. Per summer, going back to what I could find, is about 75 to 100 participants across the summer, which is still a good number for what the program was. But seeing the other competition in town, seeing the other competition surrounding us, I kind of knew then that was going to be priority number one to kind of shift that model of camp. So fast forward to 2020, we spent a lot of the off season to put together a completely reimagined model for summer camp, which was a single location, all ages at a single location, making sure our standards of Board of Health licensing was top notch, coming up with, regimented transitional scheduling throughout the day, increasing our staffing, and we were ready to go. We released it. We had a really good take because we released it in February of 2020. Then obviously March 2020, everything happened, and we had to cancel that camp season for safety. So fast forward, we said, okay, 2021, we're gonna have at it. We think we're at a good spot. We think that we can pull it off. So we did. So we retained everything that we had in 2020. So in 2021, we introduced finally in person that reimagined model. We had strong registration again in the beginning. By no means did we sell out in the beginning, but as the season progressed, our numbers got bigger and bigger and bigger. And by midsummer, the entire summer was sold out. The feedback was great. The kids had a great time. Staff had a great time. The parents were thrilled. And we saw 421 individual campers that summer. So across the 7 weeks, we had 421 individual kids come. That was 8 weeks that season, I apologize, but still an extraordinary number from where we were. And so fast forward this past summer, same thing, we went with the same model. We said, okay, let's see what happens. We increased our capacity a little bit just because we saw some capacity issues per se, or some potential in 2021. And we were sold out in less than 48 hours. So that was a shock to Joe and I. We took it as a compliment, but it was incredible. The feedback was incredible. We went to a 7-week model just because of the way the schedule laid out. And we had 335 individual campers that season. But the thing that was most important to us is that we had an increase in 7-week campers. So we had an increase in kids that were coming for all 7 weeks, which was important for a host of reasons, on an individual level, making friends, consistency, everything of that nature. But we were excited to see that people were buying in and coming for the whole, the whole summer. So, but the issue with that, obviously, is we sold out in 48 hours. Our wait list by the end of the season was 289. So we had 289 campers on our wait list waiting to get into that program. So we've spent a lot of time with different models in play in this off season, going into next summer. And what we're going to stick with next summer is the same improvement model. We're going to be at Woodward School. We're increasing our capacity. We're going to increase our staffing. We're meeting with the schools this Friday, actually, in hopes to increase our space. Joe's already churning out additional programs to offer within. So we are going to rely on our same model. We're going to rely on our base. I think we can still compete with what's out there and what's going to be coming in town. So we are planning on another 7-week session. We are opening registration on March 1st at 9 a.m. for anybody who's watching. And we're going to give residential priority this year. As we didn't have a huge take of non-residents, but 20% over the course of the summer is a good amount of bodies. So we will give residents priority registration this summer for the first 48 hours, and then we'll open it to the general public on March 3rd. So we're excited for it. Like I said, we're deep into planning it already, almost to a point where we feel like we're done planning at the skeleton of it. So we'll be releasing more information hopefully soon, probably easily by the end of the year, to mark calendars and so families can start planning. So summer camp's been a huge challenge. It's been a very rewarding challenge. Again, props to Joe, all of our part-time staff, full-time seasonal staff, who's been helping with that. So we're excited to move forward.
Are you increasing your pricing?
We'll have to because of minimum wage, because it's spiking again, but we don't plan on increasing it by much.
Okay.
Just a couple highlights of some of the programs that we've been doing. Again, we've done a couple hundred programs this calendar year, but we figured we picked our 5 favorite per se. Our first is cross country. We run the Trotter cross country team for the school. For this season, the girls went undefeated, 4-0 for the middle school league for all of our meets, and the boys went 3-1. So we had a tremendous season. Props to our coaches, props to the team, ton of fun. Great to be out there with the kids 3 days a week. So really good job on our cross country team. This past year, we had an inaugural women's softball league for the Central Massachusetts League that some of our select board members partaken in.
Let's be clear.
And It was wonderful. It was incredibly successful. We had five towns in our region field multiple teams. Spring was a strong season. We had a little smaller but strong summer season. We are planning to come back this spring to reintroduce once again. Similar model. We will be playing in town for anybody who played, who didn't get to play in town. We'll be making sure the Southborough team can play in Southborough. So we're excited to bring that back. Our adult tennis and basketball leagues are flourishing. We're selling out and filling each one. We play over at Fay on the weekends, and then we play here in town in the weekdays. And those have just been great. Joe's been partaking on that. He's a big basketball guy. So he's been playing with the community, which is just great on many levels. So that program, those programs have just been very strong. Our ski and snowboard program, we retooled to go to Wachusett from Trotter, selling out instantly. Great group of kids, great parent volunteers. So that's been fun in the winter months. And then our newest program, which will be actually be going out tomorrow officially from our department, is that for years we've been offering pre-K and kindergarten basketball with a vendor service. We've been bringing in a vendor to operate it. This year we're partnering with Southborough Youth Basketball. So through Southborough Youth Basketball and Rec, we are going to be offering a kindergarten specific basketball program. So any kid in kindergarten who wants to get their feet wet, or a parent who wants to see if the sport's right for the kid, can join us starting in December. It's a full basketball season for 3 months, every Saturday, $90. So very accessible. It's going to be led by a hired professional coach as well as Southborough Youth Basketball coaches. So best of both worlds on that one. So as of today, I think we have 39 kindergartners registered through Southborough Youth. So we're hoping once it goes out on our end, we're going to get a bigger take. So we're excited for that partnership. That's been something I've been eyeing for a while. So we're excited that that's coming.
Thank you for
into
that. I'm
play.
a very excited kindergartner.
You're welcome. Perfect. And then we just have future plans. I'm not going to go through each one of them. I just start a few. We're going to lean in heavily into pickleball. We have plans to do some leagues as well as instruction, just because everyone's excited, everyone's interested more than anything. We will have pickleball indoors at the rec center this winter. We do have a small group who's been using that in years past. We're going to open it up to the public. So that will be there. We're going to be bringing back our half-day early release field trips this school year. We obviously got rid of those because of COVID and some travel restrictions with the transportation piece of it. Now that we have Joe on board, now that we have the van, we're going to try to get those back in play. We're expanding our pre-K offerings outside of just sports. So we're going to focus on more enrichment programs, not so much just sports. And then we are expanding our concert series for the summer. So obviously one of our main community events during the summer is our concert series at Neary. We're going from 4 nights to 6 nights this year. And we're already lining up bands, already reaching out. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be good. And then just a recap of the special events that we've had in town for the last couple months. So our special events outside of the concerts, obviously outside the movies. Our first big one was our end of summer event, which was Summer Nights. I've been here for 4 cycles. So I believe it was the biggest Summer Nights we've ever had. Some of the public safety, props to myself for that one. Public safety agreed. The crowd that we had was just tremendous this year. They came for dinner, they stayed for the music, and they stayed for the entire time. So just a program that continues to build. I think every single year that we do it, we retool it every single year based on what we've had. And this year was no different. It was just a tremendous day, a beautiful night, and a great turnout. So we were thrilled with that. Food trucks are already requesting to come this year, which is wonderful. It takes away. So we already have a handful confirmed. So we're looking forward, as always, to that event. And props to public safety, who I know are here for all their help with that, because it's a big haul on their end as well. Following that, we had our Heritage Day event, our town celebration, October 10th. Another great turnout, one of our bigger parades that we've ever had. Just a great event. Again, great weather, probably one of the nicest days we had in weeks that day. We had more vendors than we had in the past 3 years, which was great. The llamas made it out on site, so they were there. And Dee from the community house got to be our grand marshal. It was just a wonderful day overall. Very well received. Again, increase in vendors. We brought back a lot of the features in the far field, like inflatables and things of that nature. We had live music at the community. And another wonderful event, well received. that we're, again, retooling already. You know, we have our sessions the day after when we get back to the office, we make our notes and we start planning from there. So Heritage Day was a great success. And then most recently, the other week, we had our second annual trunk or treat in partnership with Public Safety, where we held a trunk or treat in the parking lot, and the select board obviously was gracious to sponsor a car. Where after the public safety parade, the kids marched down and got to do some trick or treating with some community groups, community members, town departments, businesses in town. We were able to clock 520 kids, was our official count that we were able to tell based on certain people giving out certain candy. But I'm sure it was more than that. So it was about an hour and a half nonstop of people visiting. And just a great event. It was just a wonderful event. You never know in the second year of doing something what it's going to be, but we were thrilled about it. And then last but not least, we got our Gobble Wobble coming up. Against their best interest, they let me post what the logo looked like tonight. So that's the first taste, but 16th annual Gobble Wobble 5K and 2 mile walk on Thanksgiving morning. Registration's open. You can find it on our website or just Google it. It's there. Already got a couple hundred people signed up, and we expect that to start inflating over a couple weeks as we approach. And we're just looking forward to it. As always, Thanksgiving morning.
Is Jolene still keeping the colors of the shirts?
She will not tell us.
I am
She will
telling
not
you,
tell
I
us.
tried very hard to get her to tell me, and nope,
Yeah.
not sharing. It's a secret.
So, I mean, overall, again, thanks for letting me brag for a little bit of what we're doing. Like I said, that's just this fiscal year, and every year I feel we meet, I say we're busy and we're staying busier, and we just keep getting busier. So it's not a one-sided thing. It's not just me and Joe. We work with so many people in town, different departments, different people, different businesses. It's a team effort, but we're happy to do it. We've been busy, and thanks for the support, as always, from you all. So any questions? I don't want to keep you any longer.
So Tim, this was tremendous.
Thank you.
Truly, kudos, kudos, kudos. I mean, to say that all the projects are done, and
Yeah.
Don, you too, Rec Commission too.
Yeah.
My goodness, with all that had been accumulated and needing to be solved, whatever. So, I mean, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Truly fantastic. So one thing I wanted to pin down as far as the CAN thing, that I think is a good story too for everybody to hear. So we all know there's a lot of friends group that support the various departments, right? The 501c3. So there's one that supports youth and family services that I'm involved in that tries to fund camperships for people in our program, families. And we've never been able to do more than 2 weeks for summer until this past summer. And we decided we wanted to be able to fund the whole summer if someone wanted to do it. Because, you know, parents can't afford daycare, for all kinds of things, right? So we really wanted to do that. So we were able to satisfy every single need for 7 weeks, but with a lot of help from Tim and his department too. We got reduced rates, et cetera. He and Sarah worked together, but every single child in that program that wanted to go 7 weeks got to go, so.
Great.
So, anybody else? Go ahead.
Just a comment first. Congratulations to you. What a successful year. And please share it with the commission as well. Obviously, all the hard work you guys have done was just evident on the screen behind us. Sam, pickleball was 60,000. I looked it up.
Thank you.
So just so you have that.
That included the contingency, I think.
Correct.
Mhm. For Calander, just a quick question. So bringing that field online in the spring, what fields in your resting schedule will that potentially allow? Or are you not necessarily going to rest a field next
It all
year?
depends on enrollment. It's really what it comes down to. Lundblad will more than likely not be needed because of that. So by default, that will likely move off from there. But you make a great point that now that Calander is online, we can now implement that resting schedule. So I'm sure that's going to be a conversation with the commission to get a schedule going.
Perfect. And then just a question on the timers. I get calls all the time. Somebody drives by and sees the lights on at one of the fields and there's nobody there.
Mhm.
Is it on a 30-minute timer, an hour timer? Just, it would be good to know, to be able to tell people to
Yes.
just, you know, take a
So-
step back.
It's kind of simple but complicated. So tennis courts are on a timer. So that's that 30-minute.
Okay,
If a user group pulls a permit in our system is linked to the lights.
yeah,
So as long as they pull a permit, those lights are going to turn on. If they cancel a practice and they don't tell us,
the lights are gonna
those
turn
lights are
on.
going to stay
Okay,
on.
that
So-
makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
But they're paying for that anyway.
Exactly.
So, okay,
Yes,
we
they
like
are.
that. And golf league, I had written down is hope that, you know, we'd be able to utilize the golf course it appears you're doing that. So kudos to you for that. And yeah, dog park all the way. So again, thank you. Great presentation. Appreciate it all your hard work.
Sam?
Great, thank you. Again, great report, great work for you and the commission. Substantial growth here. I guess my questions are things that I plan to follow up with you after the fact here. But I'm interested in sort of the ceiling on this. Where does it go? What's the upside and what are the constraints as you think going forward? I'm interested in getting things on the long range radar. And is it field capacity that's the limit, or is it indoor capacity, or how does demand work in there in terms of where do you think the pent up demand is out there that we're able to support additional capacity? Summer camp sounds pretty exciting, but again, some space constraints now, but maybe some ways to deal with that potentially. So as you think about it, I think about it sort of as a cloud, and you're expanding in different dimensions. And where do you hit the limits? And what are the highest priorities? And how do you think through that? Which I would be interested in hearing your thoughts. We'll follow up later. But again, great job, great upside, and great support from the community. So thank you.
Chelsea?
Thanks, Tim. I think you have great support in the community to make a lot of these events successful. So I think that's awesome that you're networking with the businesses. And I think the trunk or treat event is great. I love doing it. I love seeing the kids, and it seems like everybody that participates in it gets so excited about it. So thank you for having those events for the community to go to. I think they're so important that we have those opportunities. So I wanted to say that. And I get a lot of great feedback about all the positive things that are happening in your department, adding new programs, having different options for RAF, not just sports. So I appreciate you taking the feedback from this board, other boards that you meet with, and the community. I think it shows that you're listening to what people want. So great presentation, and thank you to you, your department, and the commission.
Andrew?
That was an excellent presentation. You definitely had the dramatic moment there when you showed the flood, and then you had my suspense there.
Ready to build Noah's Ark.
So for the tennis courts that we've now renovated, and also for Calander Field, do you have a plan about some kind of regular maintenance schedule so that we won't have to have a big outlay? I mean, because it looked like one of the lessons there was that tennis court just was not kept up in the way they should have been. So what's your plan to stay on top of that?
It's just general maintenance, I think, is the minimum you need to do, especially with courts. That was just a seal job for the new courts. So yes, in 5 to 7 years is useful life. So I'm sure it's gonna come back eventually.
All right.
But we have the proper tools out there to move the water now off the court if water comes. We've already had some collaboration with DPW, just blowing off the courts and getting some debris off them so they're clean. So if someone does step on a rock, it's not going to take a chunk out of the seal or something like that. So basic maintenance is the key to a lot of this. That's just what we're planning.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll end with me, and Jazz, and I'll look at Don too. So town meeting's March 25th, unless it gets changed. That's what the schedule is right now. Capital is going to be in front of us, our second December meeting. And as you know, you'll need to get everything on the capital plan so they can make the recommendation. So you've got 4 weeks or so as far as what you think should be on there, but that's kind of the sequence and timing. So you know how it works. So
We met with them last week,
okay, good.
so they have our plan.
Okay. All right. So thank you.
Any comments?
I can talk about resting fields and turf, but we can have those
This was
discussions
great.
offline.
This was great. This was so positive. This is what we need. So seriously, good job.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming too, Don. All right, members report. So I've got 2 quick things. So The last time we met, we basically decided on a process to replace Ms. Galligan as DPW superintendent. That process is well underway. So that's basically the report. So everything that we asked Mr. Purple, Ms. Hadu, they have gotten started. So hopefully we will progress very fast. The second thing I wanted to mention, Ms. Brascio at the last meeting mentioned that she was going to potentially recuse herself from the discussion and all the things we've got to do to replace Ms. Galligan. She has since talked to the ethics office of the state and decided out of abundance of caution and conservatism to recuse herself. So she won't be participating in any of the process to replace Ms. Galligan. Okay. All right, Mr. Purple. Actually, I'm jumping over. Sorry. Who, anybody have a members report? Nothing was listed here. So no one has anything? Yeah. Chelsea? Nope. Okay. Take this.
Great, thank you. So the first item I had on there was talking a little bit about the trunk or treat. We've kind of gone over that a little bit. I will say it was insanity. It was a little bit of a gauntlet for about an hour and 20, you know, when you had 400 to 500 kids coming through. It was, you know, at the same time, a wonderful event. You know, we saw a lot of department heads there. A lot of people were very grateful, I think, to be able to have an environment where they felt comfortable going and trick or treating. You know, the good thing is, I was talking to her in a costume. There are no pictures of that.
I'm waiting for that picture.
So
So are you
I
sure?
do know there are
Sure.
people, I did take some with some children, you know, and everything in that. So people are scouring social media trying to find that, but but I do appreciate being asked to help out select board members, Roger and Narowski. But it was a great event. It was hot, you know, and it was a warm event, but it was a perfect day. It was busy. There was a lot of kids, a lot of families, and it was a lot of fun. So I think I'll be there again next year as well. One other thing, the aggregation mailing update. I think I'd let the board know about that. We had sent out a mailer to all the households, given the national grid increase that went into effect today. Wanted to make sure that people are aware of the town's aggregation program for electricity, which is significantly cheaper than it is for what national grid is going to be charging over these winter months. And I wanted to share with you some information. First of all, let me thank, you know, I'd like to thank a couple of people. You know, I want to thank Select Board Member Stivers for helping with the wording and putting things together and kind of giving the framework of this. I think he did a nice job putting it together. The aggregation consultant says, yep, the language, you know, did a nice job of trying to lay it out and then trying to figure out how we're going to fit this on a card. I want to thank Melanie Otska in our office, the executive assistant. She did a great job putting this together, working with the aggregation consultant. There are some DPW hoops we need to make sure that we jump through in order to do these, and working with the post office and trying to get everything work between, you know, the Southborough zip and the Fayetteville zip. It caused some problems. We were able to resolve those, but just as a, you know, just to give you an idea of impact, we had a call, we had an email from Peregrine Group, which is our aggregation consultant we contract with. The impact of the postcard. Southborough accounted for 179 of our calls last month. That's 20% of their total and more than any other community they serve. Worcester, which has a population of over 200,000, was second with 112. Okay,
Wow.
So significant impact. Significant number of calls came in, let's see, so on the 31st, yesterday, their fourth highest call day ever in all the years they've been doing this, right? So this has truly had an impact. Over the weekend, they had 319 online transactions. The transactions from Southborough residents were 100 of those. Okay, so, you know, this did have an impact in trying to make sure that we can, you know, I mean, most times we do this aggregation program. I think when I started this out with you, I told you, at best, it's a push. You know, maybe it's $50 difference and everything in that, which likely is going to come back somehow to the town through some other bill or some other assessment. With what grid has done to their pricing for the winter months, this is real money. This is real savings.
Triple pricing.
Triple pricing. So
And that went out on the senior center newsletter as well. I think
Yeah.
that publicity there too.
Yeah, and the senior, the senior newsletter. So I think the outreach, has worked and it's been effective. And the message is out there. I think a lot of people, again, they trust the utility company. So there's been a lot of calls. A lot of the calls that have come in were, am I on the program? So a lot of those calls were just reassuring people, yes. And if you look at your bill, and I think we tried to outline that as to how to look at your bill to determine if you're on the program, but they still needed that reassurance and that. So staff in our office, for Ms. Hale and Ms. Berry and Ms. Otska, have been trying to field phone calls, and things that I'm not sure they felt comfortable with the first time around have become very routine at this point and everything. So we're managing that as well. But just a great job all around, and I think the benefit has been tremendous for the people who weren't already on the plan. The last piece that I had was just to give you an update on the property at 241 Turnpike Road, which is the old Andrea Restaurant. This has been, I was having a conversation with Lori Lavoli, who's here tonight, our building commissioner. And this has been a long process that has been going on, a lot of conversations with the property owner. There were some issues that were brought to the town about securing the property, that there was ability to access the property. And so Ms. Lavoli, Fire Chief Achilles, had taken steps and had conversations with the property owner who, to my understanding, and I checked again today to make sure it's still my understanding, has been very, wants to work with the town on these things. The chief, has to his satisfaction, that the building is secured, the building is boarded. I think there are still, some people who would like to see it fenced, but that is not something that's required. I'm gonna ride with the chief. If he's comfortable that the building is secured, then that is, that is where we need to be. There also is, the owners of the property do have plans at some point to raise the buildings. However, they do have a proposal that is moving through our permitting process to, I will mangle this, and if you want to correct me, you can. Basically a car storage facility with a little bit of a showroom piece to it, because there are other two pieces of property which they're probably going to want to join at some point. They've already gone to ZBA and did get approval on September 21st. I'm not sure when they're scheduled for planning, but before they do anything, they want to get their permitting in line first. So they are agreeable to getting rid of the old buildings. They want to get their proposals done first. So I think it's, the fact that, we've got, two good department heads who have been working with the property owner, and the property owner has been very receptive to the questions, to the requests. And it's been a good working relationship. It may not be going as fast as people had hoped, but again, there's a process, and the property owner is trying to get everything in place for what they want to do with the property next, before they take the step of demolishing the buildings. So that is what I have.
Any questions on that one? Good job, Mr. Purple. All three things.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. One of the things just came in today regarding the tree bid.
Oh, yeah.
MAPC had the tree bid on Thursday. I'm sorry, on Friday. They opened it Friday afternoon. Quick correspondence today from MAPC. They believe they have a successful bid. They had two vendors. Everything appears to check out with them. They need to get confirmation from MassDOT that they agree with the results and everything in that. They can then make those available to the communities, and then we can contract.
So they should move pretty fast. at this point.
I'm, as soon as we get the information, we can enter the contract period pretty quickly. And then it's just a matter of beginning the process. Here's our list, and then we'll see how far we get in the list with the money we have. But we'll be able to do a little bit of an estimate based on the bid results as to how far we think the money's going to take us.
That would be great.
Can we or should we prioritize that list depending on the money, if we can't get all the way through, I bet that there are things that we would prefer as higher priority versus lower. priority.
So I think the first goal is, let's see what the results are.
Yep.
Let's do our own quick analysis of, given the costs, given what we have, here's what we think is reasonable. And if we do need to, take a look, and if it's a small variable, then maybe you take a couple, you figure out what you can take off for now until you see where everything ends up. But if it's a bigger thing, then yeah, we may have to provide a recommendation.
Sit down with the tree warden designee to get his.
Remember, there's money in the fiscal year 23 budget too for trees too, so
Correct.
just a little bit, we should be able to do it with that, so, let's just
I
stay up.
think that can be, released out.
All right, that's a good way to,
And that's it.
all right. It looks like that, go right ahead. Okay, consent agenda, we've got A through F, so, anybody want to hold A?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, anybody want to hold B? Yes. C? D? E? Yes. F. All right, so we're gonna hold A, B, and E. Everybody agree? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve C, D, and F? All
So move.
Second.
right, any further discussion? C, D, and F. All in favor? 5-0, 3 hours away. Okay, let's start with A, which is basically our minutes, and who goes again to? Okay, who held A?
I did
Chelsea
also.
did, Sam did, go ahead, Chelsea.
So I have changes to the 18th, and I'm gonna recuse from the 3rd, or abstain from the 3rd. So do you want me to go to the 18th first?
Yes.
Okay. So row 166, the vote was 3-2, not 4-1.
Right.
Row 140, Christine Schifrin's name spelled wrong, should be KR, and then SHIFRIN. 162, Pearson spelled wrong, it should be PEARSON, and 142, Shea spelled wrong, SHEA. So not substantial changes after the vote.
And 94 Pearson is misspelled also,
Okay,
in addition to 162.
Is that for you, Chelsea?
yes.
Sam?
I had those, the only other one I had, line 25, the address is 8 Lynbrook, LYNBROK.
Okay, so correct that
Not
spelling.
Limerick.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, anybody else on the 18th?
Those are my changes too.
Yes, I had, and it's on line 158. So this is in line with correction to the vote, which wasn't 4-1, it was 3-2 because I voted no. On line 158, where it's describing what I said, I think it should say, I was supportive of the promotion, but not retroactive pay. 'Cause it says,
Yeah.
he stated he is supportive of the promotion and retroactive pay, but I think I said I was not. So
Okay,
it
so it
just
should
says,
say but not instead of and. Yes.
correct, that's
Okay.
right, yep.
All right.
And then on the, I had some corrections to the October 13th minutes. You want me to do the 13th or the,
Stay on the 18th, so you finished with the 18th?
done with the 18th?
Okay, now we're gonna go back to the 3rd.
Okay,
So Chelsea, you're staying from this one, right?
Yeah.
Because you weren't here.
Correct.
Okay, anybody have anything on the 3rd?
yes.
Go ahead.
I think on line 38, Marissa is just one S. And on line 183, VH should be EH. That's it.
Say that again, 133?
133, you're referring to VH Perkins. I think the contractor is EH Perkins.
Right.
It is EH. Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Those are the only edits that I had for October 3.
anybody else on the 3rd?
Nope.
All right, let's go to the 13th. I've got a few on here. Anybody else
Okay.
have 13?
So on the 13th, I would suggest that on line 16, after where it says approved police chief contract for Ryan Newell, maybe put in parentheses, advanced on agenda and approved as indicated, because that's what we did. You see on the vote was taken 7 to 8. So I think it's confusing to keep B there unless you clarify it that way.
Okay, so I agree. I think we should get rid of B, right?
Okay.
Consent agenda, okay?
Or you could do that, that's fine.
And then, Andrew, I'm gonna come back to you, but this is what, so Sam came in after we voted. So that 400, I just want to put in parentheses, Mr. Stivers arrived after we took the vote, because we're saying he was there at the top. It's not clear why it's not 4, why they don't add up to 5.
Well, you said it right.
Yeah, it says it. Mr. Savage.
Okay, all right, all right, okay.
So I think your instinct is correct. If you just eliminate B, I think
Okay, so you're right. It does.
it's all in
Okay.
order.
All right, so back to you, Andrew, on the 13th.
So I have some corrections to what the description of what I said about the St. Mark Street project on 54, 55. I would say instead, Mr. Dennington added that if the land swap does not come to fruition, St. Mark's will keep the land and can turn the entire parcel into a parking lot.
That was confusing to me.
Well, I
too.
don't think I
circled
said
that.
St. Mark's has made it clear that.
So you think they've made it clear?
No, I'm saying, I think that what's in the minutes overstates.
I do
What I
too.
said.
So I circled, I'd get rid of the whole sentence.
No, I did say, if you make the edit that I'm suggesting, that's my recollection of what I said.
Okay, so you want to say Mr. Dennington added that St. Mark's,
No, I would say, strike St. Mark's has made it clear that.
okay,
Instead just say, Mr. Dennington added that if the land swap does not come to fruition, comma, St. Mark's will keep the land and can turn the entire parcel into a park.
okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on the 13th?
No,
Same? Lisa?
Nope.
Chelsea?
No.
All right, I think we, okay, I got rid of, okay, this is nitpicking, so on line 20, he suggested, all I want to say is, instead of taking this project out to bid, I want to make sure it's a rebid, so he suggested rebidding the project at the end of winter, so it's
Yeah.
clear that it's a rebid and not a
Yeah.
initial bid. Okay, go to 24, that's not what he said. So I just want to get rid of the to cover 15% surcharge on materials. We just don't need that piece of it. Just have it period at the end of 400,000. Okay. All right, then, let's see, on line 26, Assabet could put the town in schedule for a fall 2023 start. Assabet's not going to dig the foundation, okay? All right.
So you're taking out.
I'm changing summer to fall for a
Yeah.
fall can start.
And
And I'm taking out to pour the foundation,
Okay.
because they're not pouring the foundation.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so to pour the foundation. So Bridget listens to this, Mark, is that how she makes these changes? Or does Vanessa, or Vanessa? make-
she's on here right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's on here right now, but it
Okay.
takes a village.
All right, so I'm trying to make sure she can understand this because we're talking fast, so just, so get rid of to pour the foundation. Okay, now, on line 34, town council suggested the amendment become the main motion. If the board agrees, not main article, so main motion, change the word article to motion. All right, and then line 38, Ms. Cook stated that the proposed residential add year-over-year tax rate increase is 5.57% at this time. Okay, line 46, the board agreed not use ARPA money to decrease the tax rate any further this year, because we have used ARPA money to decrease the tax rate. Okay, all right, that's it for me. So that's the 13th. Okay, so the 13th, 3rd, 18th.
did all that.
That's
stuff.
1, 2, 3. Okay, yep. Okay, so someone make a motion to approve the 3rd, the 13th, 18th as amended. Can you break them?
So moved.
Excuse me?
Can you break them up for me so that I can?
Oh, that's true. So Chelsea doesn't
Yeah.
want
I
to
don't
vote
want
on
to
the
vote
3rd.
on
We're going to do the 18th and the 13th. Okay, so motion is to approve the 13th and the 18th as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, everybody agree? Okay, everybody favor, 5-0. Okay, the next one is to approve October 3rd as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay, so still, Chelsea has abstained, so that was 4-0 win, 1 because she was not here that night.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Okay, so we're now gonna go back to our Harper spreadsheet. So Vanessa, can you pop it up there?
Didn't we?
Oh, wait,
We got
got others.
more
Hold
consent.
We held
Oh,
others.
sorry. Okay, I beg your pardon. Be honest here. Okay, so we held B and E. Okay, so B is the opening of warrant. I held that one. Did anybody else hold that one?
Nope.
Okay, I just want to say, and I checked with Mr. Haggerty, so right now it's scheduled for March 25th. That is the last Saturday in March. That's what our new bylaw says that we passed in 18. I did look and Passover is in April, so I guess it interfered like it did last time we did this at a normal time. So right now it's March 25th. Okay, so it's gonna come fast. You know, we did it in June and then 2 May, so we're gonna have to move much faster this time.
Do we have a schedule yet?
No.
Okay.
As far as
Yeah,
meetings,
Mr. Valentine will discuss that at the next meeting. There's a
Okay.
couple of tweaks, I think, to it. And one of the things that I think you'll discuss at your meeting on the 15th is we've talked about going back to, I want to say the traditional way. Ms. Hale would remember, but where instead of trying to get departments in front of multiple boards and things of that nature, we would do a Saturday where you would have select board, you'd have advisory, you'd have school, and you'd identify any other boards, committees, departments, budget that you want to see, and they will come in front of everybody and answer all the questions and do that and try to pick, sometime in January.
and we'll reiterate this on the 15th
Yes.
when you're done.
Yes.
So when you say that was the old fashioned way, because when was,
I'm gonna look at Miss Hale, but has it been 12 years more?
Probably about that.
Okay.
So I can remember a time on advisory where advisory did its own thing. That people, if they wanted to, pay no attention to the select board whatsoever. And then we go, well, what are they doing? And then most of the time, select board would come to advisory and say, would you please consider doing this? And we would agree, but we would literally pay no attention whatsoever. Select board did whatever they were doing, we did what we were doing. So I agree
School
with
did
this. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Totally. So another discussion, right? So we're trying again to continue to make this process as efficient and also to save people's time. It's hard for everybody to come at night and do these things that they do with this. So anyway, so we'll talk more in detail.
And I think it's good for everybody to hear the same thing, same time,
Yeah.
get the same understanding.
It's always good, isn't it? Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. So next one is the appointment of the
Did you
member.
want to vote it?
Sorry.
Just for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry. So motion to open the warrant for the annual town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, it's open. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Community Center Exploration Committee. Remember, we basically formed this a few months ago. There's 7 members on it. 4 are specific people from specific departments, committees, et cetera. 3 are at large, right? So far, we haven't had a luck with the 3 at large. We have no at large, but we do have the 4 seated that were specifically named as far as who they would be. So tonight we are going to approve this, but I pulled this for a reason, not for that, but to reiterate, we need to step up our game here as far as trying to get this field as well as a couple of positions on capital, see what we can do there.
Yeah.
So it's time to pick up our Rolodexes and call people and say, we need some help here as far as this goes. This one's an ad hoc, right? So it has a finite end. Capital, of course, it's not. Go ahead.
and looking at the charge, said that called for presentation to the select board by December 2022.
Yeah, so that's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah,
This is November 1st. But they've at least got a quorum now with what we do tonight, so they can start meeting.
Okay.
They just don't have anybody on it but before that were designated. Okay.
should we make an adjustment to that now? I mean, that doesn't look like it's gonna
I
happen.
don't
not
know
our
that we
agenda.
can, because it's on consent.
Okay,
So we could do that on the 15th.
is there a time, because I know that this is, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is related to the Neary
Yes.
School Building Committee. How does the timing work out? Is that,
That's a whole
Oh.
discussion, so let's not get into that tonight. Number one, I'm not
okay,
prepared to answer it. So it is absolutely related. Part of that project is to, if we were to close Woodward, what would you do with it? Are you going to use it for a community center, or do you want to build a separate community center? So it's all.
I only raised in the context of the timing of it. It sounds like that we don't want.
Well, the Neary project is a long-term project, so we're not running afoul of what they're doing.
That's
that
all I
much I can
wanted to
tell you. So we'll get this taken care of as far as changing the charge. Okay, so that's all I wanted to hold it for, is just to make sure it's clear that we need to find some people to sit on this committee. All right. Okay.
I'm gonna abstain from the fourth
Okay.
name on there, so is it up to you if you want to break it up, or I can abstain from the whole.
I was just gonna ask for a motion to basically appoint the 4 people, so why don't you just abstain from the whole
Okay.
thing, so I understood it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can do it and break up the motion if you want, so,
It's fine, you can do it all together, that's fine.
okay.
So go ahead, make the motion.
I move consent agenda item E.
Second.
All in favor? 4, all opposed, 0, and Chelsea abstains, so 4-0-1, Bridget, on that one.
That's a good core group, so.
It is a good school group, oh, yeah. Absolutely. There's some discussions, okay. All right, now we're going on to ARPA. And, good, got it up there. So I'm going to reverse order of the 3 things a little bit. The first 2, I think, are going to be fairly easy to get through. I'm going to say the number 2, the hazard pay for police and fire, to the third one. That's going to be more discussion, I think. Okay, so everybody remembers that John Parent came to us on October 13th and basically says, well, guess what? 325 is not going to do the trick as far as the senior center. We don't think, based on the bids that came back. He's hoping that if you revisit in the winter, that you might get a better price than you got this past time, which is well in the 400s. He only had 1 bid, and it's 458, I think. So it was well above what we had allocated. So he requested that we restore money into the ARPA designated funds to reflect probably reality as he sees it at this point. He's still going to work with the ASABAT and try to see if that will get us a better number. So we're hoping that it will. He then did what we asked him to do, which is he went to Capital, and Capital has put this back. They restored it to 400 on their capital plan. We got an email from Jason, I think today, saying, confirming that. So they've done that. So the 400 is now in the capital plan. So the request tonight is for us to do the same thing, to basically put 400 as far as what we set aside for this in the ARPA spreadsheet. Now to do it though, we're going to have to take $20,000 out of another category. So you may recall that when it first started out, it was 400 in total. But that included the money for the architect too, which was $20,000. So that left us at 380. And then we voted at an earlier meeting, I think it was May 31st, to reduce 380 to 325. Okay, so if you look at the very bottom, that's where that 55 comes from. Okay, so we have to put the 55 back in completely and then find $20,000 in another category in order to put the 325 that's on here right now at 400. Does that math make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so before we vote, is everybody inclined to put it back to 400? Okay, so there's no disagreement there, right? Like that's what I think we can do tonight on that. So the question is, where do we get the other 20? Anybody want to offer where do you think it should come from? We don't have our choices, I don't think, but anyway. Andrew, where would you like the 20 to
Okay,
come from?
well, Sam, I'm sorry, I was gonna mention the National Grid.
I was too, Andrew. Sorry.
Because I've always liked the idea, but it just hasn't. I think the chicken and egg problem we have, we would want to get some input on environmental state of
Yeah.
the property. We haven't been able to do that, and someone need to, we probably need to pay for that. So, you know, looking at the list of things of like, what is their feasibility of, when would this make its way onto a, it's one that would need to be approved. I think even though the select board would be appropriating the money through ARPA, we need the town meeting vote to be approved by that. Because it's a transfer of land, it would still need a town meeting approval, so.
I think you're right.
So it's probably not gonna make it onto, sorry. Because it just hasn't taken that next step to get on the March 2023. And then again, the deadline to spend all this money is,
We've got it designated by the end of 24 and spent it by the end of 26.
so just in terms of their real world ability to move forward, that's I would say.
And I'm not sure that's the right number for the parcel either, frankly.
Well, I was gonna say to you, where does the 250 even come from? Do you do?
That's their assessed value.
Yeah, right.
It's a little lower than that.
So it's a guess, anyway.
But, you know, I guess I actually am interested in getting that one on the warrant for that town meeting and getting some traction there, but I have no idea what the number would be. That's a placeholder, and that's, you know, something that I think says some flexibility. So I wouldn't argue with taking it out there.
You would not
Or
or
not.
not? Okay,
He's not, well, be careful what he's
Okay,
saying. He's
all right.
not arguing taking it from 250 to 230. He is arguing taking it off there. So he's saying,
Yeah.
go down to 230 because it's kind of a guesstimate anyway. So I can go down to 230, but he still would like to see it on the warrant.
and I'm not necessarily against that, it just,
I'm
there's
not
some
either.
more information to get before we
Yeah.
do that.
I mean, so we've said, I mean, we've all said this, right? I think the concerns, and I'm just gonna speak for me, is that we don't want to acquire dirty land, polluted land, and I think we need a real use for it. We know what we're gonna do with it, because I don't think there's a lot of people trying to get that. I think it's safe where it is, in National Grid's hands for now. I don't think there's a lot of people raising their hand to go buy it. I realize that the adjacent property is for sale, so I get that, but until, you know, we really know we've got a problem with it just sitting there, I'm not in favor of necessarily putting that in front of what I think are other more critical needs at this point. So Sam, we totally appreciate your diligence on this one, and we're not taking it off yet, but I do think taking it out there probably is good because it's a guesstimate, it's a number anyway.
Yeah,
We don't
I
know what the
agree.
number is.
I think that was well said, Kathy.
Thank you. Lucy. Okay, so you're okay with going down to 230, right? Okay, Chelsea, okay. Okay, so the motion is to restore the ARPA money set aside to do the senior center addition to $400,000 from the current 325. Take 55 out of our surplus that's at the bottom, get rid of our surplus, and then take the other 20 out of the amount that is designated for National Grid Park.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? So that one's done. Okay, the next one, a little background on this one. So I don't remember exactly what our goal says, Sam, as far as Sam and I have been designating the, let me just call it the IT goal for fiscal year 23, whatever it says. So there were two things that the ARPA committee recommended that were IT related. One was to basically redo our Wi-Fi throughout the town, and the second was to basically upgrade our website, get new software and end up with a better product there. So that discussion is starting to percolate. MTC has spent a lot of time on that with Jay. A couple weeks ago, Sam and I, Mark, Jay, Matt approached MPC and Angela Barner of MPC. We all met in here and discussed where both things stand. The request that was made of the select board through Sam and I today was to go ahead and start the process for figuring out the Wi-Fi piece. And the first step is to not ask the vendor, the ultimate vendor like Verizon, to come in and tell us what should be done. It's, you know, you're asking someone that's going to do the work. Instead, what MPC and Jay said, we need to hire a independent company that will give us, do an independent evaluation and come to and say, this is what we need to put out to bid, okay? So I talked to Mr. Malinowski of Capital. He's fine with this as far as this 10,000 that we're talking about tonight, not going through Capital because it's really not Capital yet. It's basically just to get this plan in place, to do the survey and come in with what's needed to be done to then put the proposal together that will then go out to bid, which Capital would then vet before it came to us. Okay, so Capital is fine per Jason with what we're doing tonight. Okay, I offered to vote pending on Capital, said, no, go ahead. This is fine as far as what you're doing. So Capital's on board with this 10,000 bucks. This is what Jay asked for and this MPC agreed. So far so good.
So far, so good. I think, just to provide just a little bit of color, all these companies will give you a proposal to do something probably different. So you're gonna end up paying for how they want to do it. And rather than doing that individually, we had discussed an option, as Ms. Cook had said, to have somebody do the design for us for this not to exceed $10,000 number. And then we can take that and shop that with the various vendors so that they can then price that out rather than us getting a bunch of apples, oranges and pineapples that don't match up against each other and, you know, creates a little bit more confusion. So I think it allows us to control the process a little bit better.
Or avoid getting recommendations for that vendor's equipment approached.
And making it proprietary,
May not
correct?
be
So it
ideal.
allows us to control the process a little bit more. I think that there was general agreement with the two members of MTC and with Jay that was the preferable way to go.
Anybody have any questions on that one? So it's $10,000 is what we'll take out of the 250 that has been allocated. Yeah, so. Okay. All right. Okay, so the motion is to allocate $10,000 of ARPA money to this survey that's going to be done to basically help us design the Wi-Fi upgrade process.
So moved.
Second.
Continue further discussion. All in favor? Okay, so we've allocated another 10,000. Slowly but surely. Okay, so the next one is,
That's a quick question, how we're gonna reflect it on the spreadsheet, the tracker.
well, you'll move the 10 up, okay?
Yep.
You'll leave that at 240 as far as what's been recommended, but we haven't voted on. So we'll move the 10 up to what's been voted on, show the day of the vote.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
and then the remaining $240,000 is gonna be on one of those below the line, kind of in a holding pattern category.
Pending.
Yep, so it's still recommended by ARPA, not voted on. Okay, so we still got a big chunk, but we're getting there. Slowly but surely. Okay, so the next one is substantive. So just to kind of recap what this was all about.
I'm going to recuse myself as my husband is a firefighter in a neighboring community in the same district. So I'm gonna remove.
We want
Don't go too far.
Go pick up some coffee while you're out there. Just kidding.
Okay, so just to kind of recap the process for those who are listening in the public. Select Board last year, when we received the $3.1 million of approximate ARPA money, formed an ad hoc committee to basically come back to Select Board and make recommendations as to what they believe the town wanted to do with that money. We wanted to see what their opinion was. So they did a survey, they did some other things to basically conclude. So they came back with a list of what those things were. And one of those things was premium pay for certain town employees. Those certain town employees were basically our firefighters and our policemen. On the list of the survey, as far as results go, it was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It got 27 votes. And just to kind of tee this up, the one that got the most vote was general property tax relief, which by far got the most votes, 169. And then you had 2 that tied for next, which were sidewalks and the senior center addition. And then Sam, you got a lot of votes on this one. You must have done some campaigning on the national.
Or
So, National Grid got
voted
8%.
25 times.
I didn't realize that. So yeah, got 41 votes. Next one was mental health support for youth and family services, got 33, and then this one got 27. So that's kind of the background of where we are. So tonight, we're already, more than two years away from the start of COVID, the depth of COVID. And it seemed like it was time to basically deal with this one before we got too much further away from the start of COVID. So this is where we are tonight. So we're going to discuss this, then we're going to vote on this one as far as whether we want to allocate ARPA funds for this, if we want to change this, if we don't want to do this. So that's kind of our three choices. As is, no, or something in between. Okay. All right. So I thought I would start the discussion of this one with Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Throw me the hot potato. I've actually dug into this fairly significantly over the last months here in terms of following up the conversations from the ARPA committee. I followed their conversations about it, and clearly there's support for this. And to cut to the chase, I'm concerned about being able to do this fairly and consistently at this point in time, retroactively. And I think that if we're not able to do that, I think we should not make these payments, and we should transfer this $300,000 to the purpose of general tax relief. And so that's where I wind up. The rationale for that is, first, I clearly appreciate the work of the first responders, police and fire, and others during the pandemic. Critical resource, great job. But there were many others as well who actually stepped up during that time and did some personal risk. DPW, Public Health, Youth and Family Services provided similar support. And I understand the risk is not just to the individual responder, but risk is to families and friends of responders who were exposed to COVID at that time. So clearly it's a complex issue. And similarly, though, all town staff, including school staff, endured what I think of as pretty substantial hardship during this time, and both physical and emotional hardship to keep the wheels on the vehicle here during that time. And folks, I thought, did an outstanding job during that time. I think there are issues in terms of inconsistencies. How do you deal with staff who are no longer here, for example? I think for me, one of the heroes was the public health, the Board of Health nursing staff, who I could just watch getting ground down over that time as they tried to respond to pressures and support people during that time. And clearly, somebody like that, I think, deserves all the support we can provide. That person is no longer here, for example. So how do you recognize that? Other issues, new staff who didn't work for the entire time, how did they get supported this way? Different levels of risk and exposure for different functions. Again, there are a lot of ways that you can make this more complex. And as I tried to think about ways to do this fairly, I kept coming up short without being exposed to people saying, well, I did this and this person did that, so I'm not getting treated fairly, or you're overcompensating that person, et cetera. Another question is, how are other communities dealing with this? I actually dug around on this some as well. And I found an article by the Massachusetts Coalition of Police that did a survey and found 36 towns that were providing this pay, which is about 10% of the communities. And I also had a chance through some other things that I'm doing is to survey other towns in terms of their experience. And my results are about the same 10% in terms of people doing it. The biggest concern was that we just couldn't figure out how to do it in a fair and reasonable way across all the staff that were affected. And so the issue for me, again, is that clearly you got to recognize the effort that many town staff put into this process of keeping the government running during the COVID exposure time. And public safety staff was at the forefront of that clearly, and I think everybody else appreciates that. But the worst possible outcome, I think, is to do something that makes everybody mad, which is a great risk here. And I think we've seen some of that. I heard some of that anecdotally from folks who've done that, winding up trying to do something positive and helpful and leaving a bad taste in people's mouth, which is certainly not the kind of thing we want to do. So I guess that's my take at this point. Again, I'm certainly willing to listen to other views on that. I don't know how other folks feel, but that's sort of where I come out at this point. So, thank you.
Lisa, you might go ahead.
Sure. So I kind of, in the same camp as Sam, I also went and researched what other towns had done. And actually it's 37 now, because in October, Reading actually allocated 900,000 to 700 staffers, but they spread it out again to schools, not just first responders. They actually called out custodians and cafeteria workers. So I think my sentiments are very similar in looking what some other towns did and kind of the percentages they put. Interestingly enough, Arlington actually allocated $500,000 to public citizens that worked in grocery stores or whatever. You could actually apply as a
Can
taxpayer.
I add to that?
You may.
Arlington was one of the ones that I talked with as well. And the comment I got was that they somehow wound up with a surplus of COVID money and ARPA money.
Yeah.
And the gentleman I talked with said we were struggling to find places to allocate that,
Yeah.
which is a strange position to be in. So we're clearly not in that mode.
No, we're not in that boat at all.
Yeah, and, everybody put a different criteria. Lowell did public facing positions. As I kind of went through the 36 towns, and it was interesting what some of them had done. Some had used it as retention bonuses in different ways. Milford, which was one of the closest ones to us, I think took kind of an interesting take on it. And I think, Sam, to tie into some of what you said, there were volunteers that gave vaccines.
Yes.
So for me, it's finding that equity on how everybody that took a huge risk, how we could compensate everybody. Either we do it right. I agree. We either find a way to do it right or we just don't do it. And we allocate the money potentially to, lowering the tax rate, which we know we have a lot of things coming up in the year.
It's hard to do retroactively as well at
Yes.
this point, which is another challenge that folks mentioned to me.
It is. And I'm just trying to look over just a couple of the quick notes that I had pulled together. So again, for me, it was about trying to find the equity and the balance and in hearing from other towns and how they did it, no one seems to have found that. And I think it potentially creates a huge morale issue within the departments that we have in the town. Everybody stepped up to the plate in some extent. I mean, they may not have necessarily dealt with the public, but the DPW, you mentioned, they were out there every day. The transfer station still went on. The Board of Health did like tremendous work with clinics and, volunteers participating in Westboro and Southboro and Northboro. And again, that's not to take away what everyone sitting here has done, because I think they took a tremendous risk as well. But it's in finding that equity that I'm struggling with, Sam. And I don't think the equity lies within just one group.
And I certainly didn't find it from anybody that I talked with. Even the ones who did it said that there was pushback, some discontent. And so it's unfortunate.
Interesting.
Well, you both have pretty succinctly summarized some of the same concerns that I had. This item has always been in a bucket, which has kind of been in itself. It doesn't align with the ARPA spending categories in the same way. And so I can't really add to anything that you just said, but I'm very glad that you did that. That was I remember asking the committee of the ARPA committee back in the spring, were you able to did you find out what other towns had done? Because that was going to be a factor in how I voted on this. And that's very interesting, the information that you've gotten there. My follow-up question to you, Sam, is if your suggestion is to essentially transfer that money to general property tax relief, are you saying that's in a bucket where you are committed to using it only to reduce directly, essentially to pay for other things and like
He didn't say that, Lisa
Okay.
did, but it doesn't really matter.
it doesn't matter
I think
because
we
it's
got
still
two, if we decide that we,
I thought Sam said something similar along those lines.
Yeah.
well, maybe, okay, sorry.
Yeah, it did say that, but I guess my intent was that we've actually used that general property tax relief category for things that, again, in my mind, would offset having to increase taxes.
So, for example,
Right.
Take our money.
Capital,
That-
whatever, yep.
identifying a capital item and you have it so that it's not on a capital article.
Or other one-time spend.
One, okay,
thing.
yes.
That's what
Okay.
we're looking for, is one-time
Yeah.
spends.
Yep.
So, we could, if we decide, it sounds like we're all on the same page as far as this item. So the question is, where do we move it? So we could move it to that, or we could just move it, let it drop down to the bottom where we've got total flexibility how to use it, and move it back up to property taxes. So I don't think it matters whether we put it in part, because that's still our kind of our,
Okay.
catch-all bucket, right? So either place is fine with me as far as where we put it, if we take it out of where it is right now.
Mr. Chairman?
You're gonna get talk, I promise. We know everybody's here. We know that we're probably not making you guys very happy right now. Okay, so, my take on this is very similar to what, Lisa and Sam said. I have talked to several people that I have great respect for as far as their opinion, to try to form my opinion. This one's bothered me all along, as far as, the decisions we made thus far have been pretty easy, right? As far as what to do. I think, and we all, as far as the other things, we all want sidewalks, I think. We're all for upgrading, Wi-Fi and making sure our IT is where it should be. This to me was a hard one. And so I have truly struggled with it. I have really thought about it driving around. In no way should anyone in this room think that we don't appreciate what was done for COVID. We know it was dangerous. We know you have dangerous jobs as it is. We know that what you did when you had to go to people's houses was extremely dangerous. The problem I've got is the schools. I've always just been stuck on the teachers because I dealt with that piece of it. I also dealt with using family services a lot as far as what they had to do. So I just have trouble excluding anybody from this. So we took a look at how many people would if we did it with everybody, what would be? It'd be 600 people. So it would dilute it, so it would almost be meaningless. It'd be $500 a person. By the time you took taxes out, it's maybe $350. So that didn't seem to be the right way to go. And then you really do get the issue as who gets it, because you've got a lot of turnover every year, right? 10, 15%. So it really would not be fair to give it to someone who wasn't there during this, and then leave out people like the nurse is a classic example that, worked 60 hours when she was being paid for 19. Leave her out too. So it's, it's one of those that I hate to call it a no-win situation, but it probably is a no-win situation here that I just don't think we can do this right, which is truly try to appreciate every single person. Everybody stepped up in COVID. Everybody did what they had to do in their role to keep this town rolling, including Mr. Purple. All the stuff you had to do from home. We never knew how to work at home before. You didn't do that ever. So all the stuff we had to learn on the fly. Maybe you shut down, boom. Then you had to figure out how to do it. So I just got a problem with basically allocating money to a specific group when everybody did what they were supposed to do to keep this town in business. Okay. Chief Achilles, would you like to
I would.
comment on this one?
Good. And good evening. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate your positions. And in no way am I diminishing any effort that any other town employee made. And that's not my intent. But when I submitted my request for this initially, I think I wasn't looking at its premium pay that we actually went to work. A lot of people went to work in different ways, and in no means am I diminishing that, whether you work from home or didn't. A lot of people made this town run. However, I think both the police and fire departments, I'll speak to the fire department, was in a unique position, and I think it is worth recognizing, and it's okay to say that they did something different. Because early on in the pandemic, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to alter our work or how we did work. We were implementing strategies that we weren't sure were going to work to protect our members. And we had people going home and putting their families at great risk that I don't believe any other department employee did. So I think it's more of a hazard pay. And Kathy, you mentioned, our jobs are inherently dangerous. But we have measures in place, training in place. It was pretty challenging to manage this and to have our members exposed at no fault of their own to get line of duty injuries or illnesses directly from patient contact that I don't think any other town employee experienced. I know that we were going home and having to doff all our clothes, shower, and separate from our family members. Again, I know that one of our shifts was exposed directly from a patient early on when it wasn't clear of what your signs and symptoms could mean or what it would mean for hospitalization. Some of them have children, most of them have children. It was pretty significant. And I think that, again, no disrespect to any other town employee, no other town employee experienced that. So again, it's my recommendation that you do identify that hazard that was unique to both departments. And I think, I don't think there's inequity, because I think during the response, there was a lot, there was some inequity. We weren't able to not do what we do. We were not able to stop treating patients going into the hospitals, where a lot of people had the option and opportunity to work in different ways or isolate themselves in different ways to protect themselves. And the men and women of the fire department were able to continue to come to work, even though there was extreme uncertainty about their own health and well-being, but I think more importantly, their family. And I know the police department experienced something very similar. So I think there is a way to provide this hazard pay. There's a way to recognize people that were here from, I would say, the length of COVID, and those that were not here for the full length, that we could abridge their pay in some manner or way, so that you're not just getting paid because you exist on the fire department. I would appreciate your support or your change in positions. Again, I recognize how difficult it is, but this was unprecedented. And much like the nurses and the physicians in hospitals that couldn't work remotely, couldn't do it by Zoom, had to isolate and quarantine on their own, even though they didn't know what they had. I think that's worth recognizing for the first responders. So I would appreciate some level of reconsideration if you could, but recognize it's a policy decision that you have to make.
So this is for the public. This is the public comment. So we're not going to vote till we have. So this session is for people to speak on this specific issue. So absolutely.
I just wanted to add,
Introduce yourself, so we know who you are.
Newell. I'm sorry for my attire. I just came from my daughter's field hockey game.
Undercover.
Undercover. I also wanted to echo the chief's sentiments on this. It was an unprecedented event, and our officers, our firefighters, there was never a question about whether or not you'd come to work or not. We had to show up. We had to be there. We had to handle calls. We had to go into homes. We had to wrestle with people, place them under arrest, spitting, close contact when you do arrest somebody and have them in a cruiser with you, breathing the same air for the whole length to get them to the police station. Inherent risks at a time that we really didn't know if we were going to get sick. We would see officers on the news that were dying from this. I believe there was a Rutland officer. Fairly right from the beginning, I had officers that were highly stressed. It was just a real unknown and a very scary time for both of our departments. And that's why I do agree, it feels more like a hazard pay than it would be a premium pay. These officers and these firefighters, like I said, they came to work, they went home to their families. In a full disclosure, I got it in January. I brought it home and I gave it to my family. So it was scary. It was a scary time, and I think that these specific, again, nothing to do with any other department members within the town. I think that these two departments were placed in a very unique, very dangerous, very scary situation. So I also would ask that you reconsider.
I'll answer any questions if you have any while we're here, or
So any questions for either chiefs, and then we'll open up to anyone else that's here that let them speak to this one.
I guess I'd be curious, do you have a model or proposal about how to deal with things like people who are, not there during the prime time, if you will? I think Chief Kelly indicated some sort of prorated approach might be appropriate there. And what does that do to staff that are relatively new who weren't during, I've seen, for example, period of March of 2020 through the end of 2022 or to middle of 2022 into 2021, I guess, somewhere in there.
I think that it's reasonable, and I won't speak for every member of my department, but I think they would recognize the fact that if you were employed with the department from January 2020, probably through the peak, the second wave that we had, and maybe we set the date of December 31st, 2021, or I know we had a bump in the spring, that if you work the entirety, you would be eligible for the full hazard pay, and it would be prorated based on your time. Much like a contract, we don't go backwards or somebody to the left to give them something that they're not currently employed and get a benefit. So I'm not concerned about that. But I think there would be some understanding that if much like we're doing with the call members, my proposal was they wouldn't get the full premium pay because they were used in a different role, and we would recognize that. So I think there's a way to do it that's equitable for those that had the highest risk and the longest exposure. So I think there's a way to do it.
Okay. And by the way, I use the term premium pay because that's the ARPA, that's in the ARPA regulation. So, Chief Newell, any different proposal for how you might do that if you're going to reconsider?
I agree with you, Chief.
Okay, so just to explain, because you guys aren't normally at our meetings, so this is the chance for public comment on the issue that we're talking about. So we just bring you up one at a time, because this device is what lets the public see what's going on. Okay, so thank you both, chiefs.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
So you'd like to come up? And just introduce yourselves, whoever you are.
Good evening, Select Board. I'm Ben Wilmot. I'm the Secretary for the Firefighters Union, representing them. I think our two chiefs did an excellent job so far, making a point that we would also want to make, that there was a realized increase in risk for firefighters and police officers who were still working, especially through the beginning of the pandemic when there was very little info about what risks actually existed. We never stopped going into homes. We never stopped coming to work. And a lot of guys in the department did take this home to their families, unfortunately. I want to ask and maybe give some guidance, if I could, about where to look, maybe to help determine what other departments have done. I know some of the ones that you mentioned that you've gone to Arlington, Milford, their fire departments don't provide ambulance services themselves. So if we look at some other towns, if we're going to look further into how they've been divvied up, I'd urge you to look for fire departments that provide their own ambulance services, because that is another increased level of that risk to us, aside from what other departments may have faced in other municipalities. And then I'd really just like to kind of urge the board to take the effort to find a way to make it equitable among employees in town. And because I'm sure that you guys can come up with something. And I'd like to see that done to be able to really show the appreciation that the town and the board had for the services provided during this difficult time. You know, instead of just words for it.
Thank you. Well
Thank
said.
you.
Good evening. Neil Spacey, I'm one of the shift officers for the department. In January 2020, I left fire prevention, lived in an office, and went back to the street just in time for COVID. I want you all for a minute to take yourselves back to March 2020, not today, because today we know much more about this virus. We can all be like, it wasn't that bad. Put yourselves in March 2020. I could speak for my group. We went to a call. We were told to do screening, which we did. But the people didn't understand the screening. We were told to wear surgical masks, which we found wasn't a good enough barrier. My group, one day, goes to a call. We do all this. The chief calls me into the office. Hey, you know this COVID thing? Yeah. That person you transported is positive. And she's really bad. They transferred her up to Boston. Okay, what is COVID? Well, we don't really know yet. Right now, this is, if we're all old enough to know, the AIDS epidemic. What is this? Can I touch a surface? Can I drink out of a water bubbler? This is what we were dealing with while many other people could be in their homes and be safe and secure. We are out there working in that environment, not knowing what it is. So in my head, my 10-year-old at the time, you know, what do I do about him? My wife, she's working from home. She's in tech, she can do it. What do I do for that? We have other members. So now I have to bring in with the chief, my other members on my shift and explain to them. Well, one had to go live in another house because he had a baby. Another couldn't see his kids, who he sees all the time. He's divorced, shared custody, couldn't see them for months. And that member lost their taste and smell for 364 days. Now, while this is all going on, we don't know what it is. They're talking about people are going to be in the hospitals. They're going to be intubated. They're going to be on breathalyzer. We don't know. You know, I have slight asthma. No one knew. We didn't know what it was. And that was the environment that we were working in. And it was downright scary for us, our spouses, our kids. That's what we were in. Remember, when this started, it was wipe everything down because you might get it. Don't be within 15 feet. Don't, all these things were going on that now we forgot about because we're past the height of it. But we lived through that height, straight on, in complete darkness. But we still did our job. We still did it. We still got in the back of a box of an ambulance, confined with these people to take them to a hospital, which we knew was exposure environments, and then come back and live together and hope that we didn't give it to each other, which we did. Many of our members got COVID. I would add that a lot of the people that ended up coming back to in person was post-vaccine. So there was always a vaccine out there. So even when schools went back, there was a vaccine out. There was an understanding. So I'm not, again, just as everybody else is reader, I'm not discounting what everybody else did. Do the emergency management, I understand the whole scope of what everything went into it, all the way from the start to even the FEMA reimbursements that are going on now. But don't look at it now when you make this decision. Look at it in March 2020, when you were even sitting in your house worried about what is this? We were going to people's houses that had it. And we were still doing our jobs to take care of them because that's what we do. But that's not really what we get paid for in that extra hazard. And that's what hazard pay is, or premium pay is. You went above and beyond the environment that you're usually signed up for. I didn't sign up as a firefighter or an EMT to deal with some virus that was killing millions of people. But that's what we did, and none of us went home, and none of us didn't come into work. We still did it. And we still went home to our parents, I mean, our families, and we still came into work. So I would like you to look at it that way and not in the grand scope of COVID today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I know that the board members up here appreciate, sorry, can I just say something? Yes, you can. I gotta come up here. And reintroduce yourself.
I'm still Tabitha Conway. I'm in the fortunate position of my career as a firefighter started here in Southborough. It started at the end of 2019. And my academy experience started in February of 2020. And what should have been a predetermined time we didn't end and graduate until November of 2022, which is much longer than it should have been. During COVID, we were still in the call members. Chief Achilles had protocols in place to keep us out of the building. We weren't allowed in. We were backup if we lost the whole shift. But I'm in the unique position where I can speak as a call member. I was not full-time then. And I don't want to speak for all call members, but I think most of them would agree that as a department, we stand together. So the animosity between who gets what, from my personal standpoint, isn't an issue. It's recognizing that we all stand together. So that's, I think everybody else has an equestrian. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. They've all said it pretty well, but in the unique position that I would not be entitled to the full amount, what would be prorated is peanuts over what we do recognize. And I think it's important that we recognize who was there and what they did. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Tim Cole. Actually, Neil's my shift officer. I work here for the last 7 years. I actually came up from Rhode Island originally. So I got COVID in 2020, April of 2020, excuse me. And it was a really tough time for my family. You know, FaceTiming a 2-year-old and trying to explain why dad can't be at the kitchen table and he has to be down in the basement. It's pretty awful because you can't explain that to a 2-year-old. You know, it was very tough for my family. It put a lot of stress on our family. The first time that we were sent home, when he was talking about it, my wife actually left with the kid and went to my brother-in-law's home. So I was home for about 10 days until I got tested to see alone, just to see what was going to happen. My wife was calling me. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know if, you know, who knows? You know, hey, I got to call an ambulance. I'm having difficulty breathing, or whatever the case was. And I can tell you, and I bet you he can tell you, that when my doctor didn't send over the fax note that I was okay to go back to work, I was irate because I wanted to be at work and get through this time. And, you know, I'm not discounting what you guys did or didn't do, but it really was a stressful time for everybody on this department. And that's all I got for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well said, everyone. Thank you for speaking so eloquently and calmly. Very helpful. Okay, so back to the select board. Does anyone else want to make a further comment after what we've heard?
Yeah, I guess I'm willing to rethink some of this based on what we've heard. I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight on it personally.
Okay, Andrew.
You want to defer this for, I don't know that my position is going to change, but I mean, this is obviously difficult. I've listened very carefully to everything everyone said. It's, you know, a lot of people experienced. I understand that you were in a, you know, unique position in many respects. You know, it's just difficult dealing with an issue like this in the context of a fiscal spending decision, you know. But I think that if we were to not make a decision tonight, that on the we should just make a decision at the next meeting at the February. Would be, not February, November.
That's
15th.
great if that's the next meeting.
meeting.
Under the theory that we need more time, because, you know, it's public discussion. What, I don't know what new information we're gonna have on the 15th that we don't have tonight. I'm happy to postpone it if that's what everyone wants to do, but I just think we may be delaying the inevitable at some point. And the further we get away from you know, March of 20, the less direct this is to what happened in March of 20. So I still think we need to make a decision soon, if not tonight, as far as whether we're going to allocate this money to this category or not, or some of this money doesn't have to be the whole thing.
We would be,
use a different number.
based on the information you relayed, let's say, like a minority of communities. That
Right. And again, I agree that making a decision soon is very important, and I'm prepared to do that. I just like to think about,
Okay.
you know,
Fair enough.
potential other options. I don't, can't think of anything right off the top of my head, but I'd like to think about it. So,
Lisa?
So again, for me, it's not about what the risks that were taken. And yes, at the beginning of COVID, there's no question the risk that you put yourself and your families at. It still comes down to a little bit of equity for me. There were nurses at the schools that were testing kids and you know, vaccine clinics and vaccinators, and it's just finding that right equity. I'm not against necessarily doing something. I just don't know what it is. And I think it encompasses more than we're talking about tonight. I think it's a broader discussion. If I had to make a decision tonight, you know, based on one group, I don't know that I could support that, because I don't know necessarily that that's the right thing to do. Again, there were teachers that, you know, went to schools when schools did come back. Yeah, there were vaccines, but they still got sick. They still took COVID home to their families, maybe not necessarily at the beginning. But I think it still happened. If we're going to allocate this money based on a 2-year period from 2020 to 2021, I think you've got a lot more people that are affected in equity from this. If you're looking to do a small window of from March to December of 2020, then maybe you might be looking at a different window. I think for me, that's where this board has to draw the line. If we're going to look at 2 years of COVID, it's a much bigger discussion.
I think that it would be a very long and imperfect process to follow to try to set the line. Where you would begin, where you would end, what departments would be included. And I think it's hard to see a result that leaves everyone happy.
And I think, Andrew, you know, again, so 36, 37 towns, and out of those 37 towns, we've talked about Milford and Arlington that I think you said don't have fire. So that actually,
We don't have ambulances.
ambulances, I'm sorry, I take that back, everyone has fire, sorry. Ambulances, so maybe that even takes it down to now 35. Again, I think every board that's considered this, and I will guarantee you this discussion has come up many boards across the state. And I think everybody's faced with the same challenges. And I think that's where I'm at, is I want to do the right thing. I want to do the right thing for you, but there's also others that I want to make sure that should be included are included. And it, again, it comes down to equity for me. So I don't know what else to say.
which I'm interested in as well, certainly. But again, I'm wondering, have I missed something in terms of an opportunity to approach this differently? So far, I don't think so, but I'm certainly prepared to think about it a little bit more.
This is hard. I think I'm going to say Lisa is seeing the closest to how I feel right now. I just can't leave out the others that I think did also took a lot of risk. And we can start naming them. And then we get so subjective. I think if you put 10 people in a room, you'd have 10 different ways to do this. So I don't see how we come up to an agreement if we say that we want to do this, but we also want to broaden that pool to others. And if we broaden it to everyone, it dilutes it so much, I think it makes it meaningless. And to the group here, we have actually heard from another town where they did do something similar, and they said in the end, they wish they hadn't, that they made no one happy. Everyone was unhappy with the way it got done, so they did it, and they wish they hadn't, just because of the way it turned out. So we've heard that too. So this is really, really tough. And then if you go back to the two departments we're talking about, I think even within those departments, there's different levels of people who took different levels of risk. I think that there are certain, people there, not everybody goes in ambulances, for example. And so therefore you probably had that group that took the most risk, and you could fractional death. So to me, it's even hard to do it within the two departments as far as seeing everybody took the same amount of risk. So I think I'm still where I was when I came in, although again, this is the hardest one by far I think we're going to deal with. And in no way do we want anyone sitting here thinking we don't appreciate you. That is as far from the truth as it possibly can be. I think the chiefs know that. I hope you guys know that. But I can't get there. So.
And I can't get there right now either. I'm hoping that maybe I'll.
So we'll, if you
different
want to
idea.
wait, we'll wait. Okay, so we'll table it for, I mean, I think that's a reasonable request if one person wants really more time.
I agree.
So we really come up with, because I really would like to see this to be, a decision we all make together, and not one that is, a split vote. Where it really done. This one I think we should do together and try to come up to an agreement. So why don't we table it for tonight, not vote? We'll put it back on for the 15th and do it again.
And we'll all dig some more and see if there's, again, a better way.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
We don't
all
want to
for
take away
coming.
anything that happened this afternoon. It was a beautiful ceremony. We're very happy and very proud of everybody that was part of it. You got to see all your kids, where they pinned you. That was great. So.
Thank you all for
Thank you,
coming
guys.
and for sharing your viewpoint. Very important. Thank you.
So one of the things to get is
I think she'll know she's on there. Is everybody? Yeah. Andy, do you want to take like a 2-minute?
yeah, let's take a 2-minute recess.
You're usually the one that suggests that. I was waiting for you.
Thank
to
you,
suggest it.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys. And she can come back in.
So Chief,
But I think that's still-
this is really hard. I promise you this is hard. So
Is it still
we're
on?
gonna take it up again. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
at the end, maybe.
Yep. Okay, so we're back in session. So before we get started, Marcy, I did not see your hand up until we actually had finished that topic. So if you still want to discuss that topic, you can come in at the last public comment. Excuse me?
Just Roger.
I thought we were gonna take her now, hang on.
No. We're done.
She's still in the attendee list.
Okay. So Marcy, we will let, and you come in at the very end and you can still talk about that topic. Okay. All right. So on to Hopkinton. Is that next?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so to tee this one up, tonight we're going to continue to discuss allowing Hopkinton to contract with the MWRA, or to, excuse me, to connect to the MWRA water supply through Southborough. We last discussed this at our meeting on September 20th. During that meeting, we voted 5-0 to inform Hopkinton that we are amenable to attempting to strike a deal to allow the connection that is acceptable to both towns. And for the record, those contacts were made. At our 10/18 meeting, we agreed on a process to keep the public informed contemporaneously with our work by putting a page on the DPW section of the town website that will contain all relevant data and information, including public feedback. Mr. Purple and staff have made significant strides with that since our last meeting. Tonight's agenda item is to continue that discussion and decide on next steps. Before we get into the details of the next steps, I would like to say publicly that we have had some feedback that included suggestions on involving capital and or PWPB at this stage. There is no intention to not involve both groups at the appropriate stage of this process, but we are not there yet. The select board needs to first determine whether we can agree on the significant elements of a proposed intermunicipal agreement, IMA, similar to the one we have with Ashland currently, that we can discuss with our peers in Hopkinton. This is the sole purview of the select board. Without that tentative agreement, there's nothing for capital nor PWPB to vet. I think it is important to acknowledge tonight that there will be some necessary appropriation by town meeting to implement the proposed connection. At the minimum, we will need to fund a peer review of the proposed engineering plan, even if eventually reimbursed by Hopkinton. And therefore, the select board would not sign a final agreement with Hopkinton without an affirmative town meeting vote next spring. And I think that's probably the most important sentence I've said thus far, okay? If everyone agrees with that statement, then it seems that the next step the select board to take is to define the main terms of a deal that we believe would be appropriate for Southborough, and then find out if there's a deal to be consummated with Hopkinton that includes those terms. The select board would take the step in an executive session. It's a contract. We can't negotiate a contract in public. And we do that in the very near future to keep this process going forward so that it would be ready for town meeting if that's where we end up. I would also strongly recommend that select board continue to ask John Butler to continue working with us through the next phase because of his specific knowledge of water and all the other attributes that he has that would be helpful in this process. So, discussion.
We also talked last time about Mr. Butler doing his presentation that he did for us with Public Works Planning Board and the Capital Budgeting Committee.
I believe he's in the audience, but so I'm going to speak for him for a moment. We'll see if he wants to come over. But it's my understanding that he's talked to Mr. Malinowski about this, and Mr. Malinowski believes it's too soon too, that we should go ahead and see if we can come up with a deal. And then at that point, capital will be asked to do that specific things that have to be done. So Lisa, it looks like you don't agree with that?
No, it's not that I don't agree, Kathy. I'm just trying to think how we can simultaneously do both things, allow the public to be able to comment. I mean, the first discussion we had quite a bit of comment, you know, Sherry Wittes, and I'm not against moving forward, but I think we need to do them simultaneously.
We can do parallel, that's fine.
I
If we
think-
decide, so if Mr. Butler's fine with going and talking to the two chairs of the two groups and arranging a meeting that he would be there to basically do the same presentation, more or less. Ms. Galligan is still here. She would be here too. And then, you know, give the public another chance. Now, this is soaked in a little bit to ask for the question. That's fine. So I'm just telling you what Mr. Malinowski said when Mr. Butler talked to him about it. So I'm trying to just to relay details that I know, facts that I know.
So can I just jump in again? Sorry. So if maybe Capital doesn't think it's ready, then maybe Public Works Planning Board spearheads that. And again, it's just another opportunity for the public to be able to come to ask questions. So if maybe Capital doesn't think it's that part of the process, maybe could we ask Public Works Planning Board to
Sure,
to meet
and
and-
they've had the opportunity to weigh in on that. We have talked with Mr. Boland, yeah. Sorry.
So-
He has not reached out to me, at least, about a meeting, and I'm happy to have a meeting there. Clearly, more input, the better on this stuff. And I think one of the things that we've mentioned at one point in the past is put together an FAQ for questions that have come up. There've been a lot of questions raised that I think are based on some misinformation. And the more we can do to inform people that we're not running out of water, for example, and water pressure is not going to go to zero in Southborough if we do this, those kind of concerns I've heard. So I think we can help calm some of those concerns by creating an FAQ. I'd be glad to take a whack at first pass at some of that stuff.
Which we agreed to do last time. So
Yeah.
I agree that again, we can do this all stuff in
Yeah.
parallel, right?
Yeah.
So Sam, do you want to talk to Mr. Boland about
Yeah, I'm happy
convening
to.
a PWPB meeting to basically ask Mr. Butler to come and then allow the public to?
Or
I think Mr. Murray has already actually made that suggestion, but I'm happy to reinforce it as well.
Or should it come from you, Kathy, as chair of the board, as a request from the board? I think when Public Works Planning Board, when we talked about them before and
Yeah.
why they didn't meet, and one of the things that was said is the select board didn't ask them, so.
Okay, so I'm happy to make a
Yeah,
formal
okay.
request to have that meeting. I will make sure Mr. Malinowski and Capital knows that's what I'm doing in case he does want to.
Yeah.
Since they're gonna do it, maybe go ahead and have another joint meeting. And they can do that. At the same time, I think we still continue with our process, right?
And I'm good as long as we're, again, the public has an opportunity, Kathy, I think that's important.
We're all on the same page. We want the public to be-
Given that we're going to be asking the public for money at town meeting in the spring, there's even more value in making sure people are informed at least, but again.
So the one thing I just want to caveat, you don't know that yet.
well,
I
there's a
mean, we
good chance that-
understand
yeah.
what's on the table,
Yeah.
but we don't understand what financial commitment, if any, is
I'm
going to be
saying
asked of the
At
town.
least for the engineering, the third party engineering.
Even if it's reimbursed, we still have to ask for it. So I still think that is probably going to happen. So I think it's likely that that is.
Yeah.
And I think we all think that it should maybe be there in some form or fashion to make sure that, again, town meeting has a chance to weigh in on this. No, this is important.
I agree.
They did not do this with Ashland. This is different. This, everybody knows, that was done solely by the select board, the board of selectmen at that time. But, yeah, I think that, we believe that's where it probably should end up, just to make sure that no one's gonna say, you know, we didn't.
But again, reinforcing your point, I think that at this point, there is no there in the sense
That's
there's no
right.
deal.
That's right.
So people have to have something to look at to say, is this a reasonable deal for Southborough? Is it something that citizens can support, et cetera? And at this point, all that's hypothetical. And I think it is not a huge leap to get to something that is pretty tangible and get some feedback from Hopkins to say, you know, you're crazy, or it sounds like it's going to work, and go from there. Because again, nothing worse than getting a lot of, you know, smoke and mirrors around this thing and having it all evaporate, waste everybody's time. Or have something turn out that Hopkinton is, you know, amenable to, you know, paying the bulk of the expense, and there's very little cost to Southborough. And that's another substantial piece of information to have as we talk with people. So I think, as Lisa suggests, parallel tracks here.
Yeah.
Move as fast as we can. Well, we're getting into budget season now, so there's concern about
Yeah.
time and resources to do that. But I think that, you know, deputize a few people to push on both those tracks maybe would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay, so based on what everyone has said, how does this sound? I will reach out to Mr. Boland and make a request that he convene a meeting to basically continue to look at the data that we have on this. I mean, you invite Mr. Butler to basically do the presentation, give the public another chance to come back and ask more questions. I'll make sure Mr. Malinowski knows about it in case he wants to convene capital with that meeting, so they have a joint meeting like they did the first time. And then in the meantime, the two other things I think we decided tonight is what is our next step.
Yep.
So I would suggest our next step is executive session, which is what we planned on October 3rd, and postponed that because of some comments we got from the public. I think we've answered the public pretty well, as far as what we've done so far. And so that's what I propose. And then I also propose keeping John Butler involved, so to help us get to the point that we think we need to get to sit down with Hopkinton.
He has his hand raised.
I agree. Mr. Butler has his hand up too, so maybe he has some comments.
Okay, so you can go ahead and bring him over, but let's let this select board talk first.
He's in the room.
Okay, he's there, he's here.
Yeah, he's in the room.
Okay, so John, hold on for a few minutes. Let's let everybody weigh in on what I've said so far, and then you can do your thing. So, Andrew.
So I think the next step is, I think this is what you're saying. We should proceed to meet in executive session to talk about potential letter of intent terms that we would propose back to Hopkinton at our next meeting. Because one thing that struck me is, I was just trying to look for it here. What was the date when Hopkinton DPW director and I believe it was the town manager came and made their presentation? So much time has passed. I think it was in June.
6/14 is when we
Okay.
heard first. 'cause
So we're
I
coming
was
up
already-
on 5 months where they haven't, other than they heard back from us a general expression of interest, but nothing.
Right.
I think it just needs to move forward in a more concrete way. And second point, I lost my train of thought. I remember my second point.
Good for you.
Oh, no, this is it. That I think that it would be very helpful if you're going to speak to the Public Works Planning Board about the context of this, to begin not with John's presentation in September, but to go back and send to them and encourage them to look at the video of the presentation that Hopkinton made, because I think some of the misunderstanding is that I don't think people appreciate this began with Hopkinton didn't come and just said, we want you to open up your whole water system so that we can run MWRA water in Hopkinton. It began with that was the request plus an offer to fund capital improvements to Southborough's water infrastructure. So that's why I think I viewed it, and I think other people on the board viewed it as an opportunity that we should explore. It doesn't make sense not to explore it. That's the reason why I think we want to move forward on this discussion. It's not that we've made a decision yet. It's just an opportunity that should be explored, and there's no way to do it without getting back to the other side. It's now been 5 months ahead of it. So
because if we can't come with a deal, there's no, we can't go with the deal. We're done. I mean, so how do you know when you get a deal unless you sit down and, write down the things we'd like to see a deal, and then go sit down with Hopkinton and see whether we can put that deal together.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it sounds like you agree that the next step is the executive session to start talking about the terms of an LOI, what we think should be in it. Okay,
yes.
all right, and what do you think about John Butler continuing to be involved as he has been thus far?
I think it's a good idea.
Sam?
Ditto.
Let's see. Lisa?
Ditto times 2.
So I'll get to that, but I have some comments first, because I agree. So I think one of my questions is, do we know yet what roads are going to be impacted and or which neighborhoods by adding pipe, et cetera, so that we can put that on our website so people know what we're talking about? Because I don't think I could answer that question.
I don't.
I think, again, and some of this goes back to, I'm slowly putting together the response to a lot of the questions that Ms. Wiz have brought
Okay.
forward. But the overarching theme of some of this is, it's way too early to tell. I mean, Hopkinton went to town meeting, they got their engineering and design money, but they've done minimal things so far until they understand whether there is a relationship to be had here. So it's really kind of early until you decide what you're willing to do. And again, as Mr. Dennington had said, capital improvements, you may decide that, well, you want to do these capital improvements. We'd like you to do these capital improvements. It's more important for us to do more looping into our system, and to do some of those things. So I think it's too soon to identify where that work is going to happen.
Generally,
But-
the PAR guys will say this part of town is where the connection has to be made.
Right, but in terms of saying certain streets, I mean,
But I'm even okay with generally, because I, like, let's say we're talking to, well, Pine Hill's not a good example because there's no water up there, Chris, but at
Don't
least.
ever forget that.
I won't forget that. But at least we know it's not gonna be from Pine Hill, right? So we know where the pump station is, right? So I think just identifying where at least the sections that could be impacted, I think that would be helpful for people to know,
And we know where the Hopkinton intake point is.
right?
So-
Well, like, I don't know where the Hopkinton intake point is.
It's in the southeast corner.
Okay, so I didn't know that, right? So I just think some of the things that could be general, but at least puts it out there,
sure.
right?
I agree.
So that's one comment. And my other one is in terms of timing. So, we're 5 people that can come up with some pretty good suggestions. I think we've had some good public input. I think there's probably more to be had. So how would so let's say Public Works Planning Board meets and they have some things that they think of either from prior experience or whatever that they think we should know in an executive session environment. Like, do we want to ask Public Works Planning Board to provide us, are we having an expectation of them to give us feedback so that we can utilize it as we're thinking through all of these things that aren't necessarily in an open session?
I don't see how you say yes or no to that. I guess it's certainly a possibility that after their meeting or joint meeting and with the public, that they might end up with some things that we hadn't thought about. And I think it's possible.
Yeah, okay.
But let me just say this. Mr. Butler has done a really, really, really deep dive in this. So I still think that the better path, not the only path, but the better path is to go forward with executive session and see what we come up with. We can always pause it and say, well, now let's wait and see what happens. But I still think we've got to keep going here if we're going to get this done and be ready truly and have, advisory weigh in, et cetera, before town meeting. So I still think that we should not wait for that meeting to take place. We still go ahead and schedule this so that we can start truly rolling up our sleeves as far as the terms we should think that need to do in there.
I agree with you. I just want to make sure that we don't have an executive session on the 15th and we're done. Like, I think we still need to have another
Say no,
session.
that's not, we're not saying that we're going to be done.
Yeah, I think we just need to, I guess I just want to make sure in the directive that we're looking for some sort of communication back from Public Works Planning Board after they hear from the public and, have any other ideas that we want that so that we can utilize it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how much technical input we're going to get from Public Works Planning Board. I mean, none of us is an engineer.
You're one of
Mr. Boland.
5, so.
Mr. Boland is the closest we have.
But it could be the public
Yeah,
input
Yeah.
at Public Works Planning Board, right?
absolutely.
I think, we've had good public comment here that
On the
has
other
generated
hand,
some of that.
I think an important aspect of that is technical expertise to answer questions from the public. So you get some of the engineering folks, the PAR person in there maybe to do that, because I think it's important to get, solid technical base that
Yeah.
PWPD doesn't have, so we can have that kind of public discussion with them. And you're right, maybe that process comes up with some suggestions or ideas or concerns that we haven't thought about. So we listen.
So the one thing I just want to point out is going back to what Mr. Dennington said. It's been 6 months, it's going on 5 months since Hopkinton has been here. And we need to make sure we don't get into that analysis paralysis. Here are the things that we have at this point that we feel are, in a proposal to Hopkinton that we feel are important for us to continue these discussions. There may be others, there may be additional things to bring in, but this is what we feel is important to make a starting point. So I don't think that whatever you put on the table is, okay, this is your only chance, this is it, it's only this list. It's the beginning of the conversation, and I just want to make sure that, keep that in mind as you move forward.
But I do think it's important to get our, first response out as timely as we can here and see what they think. And, again, I agree, Mark, I've never done a deal where the first shot was the last one. So you gotta
It's a start.
work it.
Start
and see what
someplace.
they say.
Because everyone needs, it's just like any negotiation. You're gonna give me your best, this is where I think I want to be. I'm gonna tell you where I want, where I think I should be. They're vastly different places. And now we need to sit down and talk about what's realistic, where's the commonality. And, the best deal usually is when everyone walks away a little bit unhappy. And I understand that's not what you want to hear. But
That's reality.
it is the reality, and I think, but at least if you've got a good idea, 75% of the things that here's where we need to, that are important. And if you go into that and find out you have no commonality there, and there's other things you still want to consider, then, we may be spinning our wheels here. But understanding the position that Hopkinton's in, I think that, they would be, very receptive to the discussions and to the things that are important to the town, because providing water to their residents is a base need, and that's important to them.
I will just say, I'm not as stuck on the 6 months. I think however long it takes to do this and do it right and get public support is what's important. I do agree, agree with you, Andrew, though, that we've been talking about this for a long time. We need to start moving in a direction. But I'm not as much stuck. If it takes a year, and I know they have a need and we want to help them as soon as we can, but I think we just need to make sure that we do this right and there's support behind it as well. That's all.
So Mr. Butler, would you like to speak?
Yeah. Still on mute.
You're on mute, John, if you don't know it.
There we go. Well, I substantially agree with everything you said. I only thing I would, and I think it would be great if Public Works Planning Board had met on this at any time or had been meeting on it. That would be a good forum for public discussion. I would, and by the way, I did show up and talk to the Capital Planning Committee on their meeting. I think it was the 24th of October. And there seemed to be some agreement at the time that it wasn't ripe yet because we didn't have any money attached to it. I actually would say at this point that if you as a board are considering going into executive session to talk about what you might want to propose to Hopkinton, I would say at this point, it'd be better for capital to hold off. I think you don't really, I think you might not want a discussion right now about spending related to the Hopkinton proposal in a public session of capital planning until we have some numbers that come back from a conversation between your board and Hopkinton about what the shape of a deal might be. It would be better to have that process attach a money number to this before it gets to capital for consideration than to have them speculating about it right now, is my view of it. So, I think that, but on the other hand, Public Works Planning Board can discuss the whole subject, which would be great. I don't know what it takes to make that happen, but I think if you write to them, maybe that'll do it. It would be good if they did. I would say, by the way, that all of the input, every single one of these meetings, even though Ms. Galligan and I have spent a lot of time on this in meetings and thinking about it and talking to PAR and things, there still has been value to all of these public sessions and the board discussion. It's been productive. So I think it will continue to be so. But I think it's a good idea what you said, to take the next step, to get something in front that you think is good in front of Hopkinton.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion I'm gonna make is to basically confirm that our next step is to discuss this in executive session and to continue to ask John Butler to assist us in this process.
And ask Public Works Planning
Yeah,
Board.
I always said, okay,
Okay.
and then,
For
so I make a
public.
compound motion,
Okay.
and I will, on behalf of the select board, request that the Public Works Planning Board basically schedule a meeting to discuss this topic.
So
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Get rid of six, 5-0. Okay, done.
Executive session on 11:15 or another date?
Can you talk to everybody and
We'll
see what
schedule.
works? When are you leaving?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to get that done in the next couple of days. Sooner the better as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last topic, which is the discussion of potential, what we know now as far as potential non-money, non-budget warrant articles for annual town meeting on March 25th. So we just going to try to listen tonight so we kind of have an idea of where we think some things are going. Okay, anybody want to start? Chelsea?
Sure, yeah, so the opioid settlement money, we need town meeting in order to release those funds.
Really?
Yes,
Yes.
Really?
yes.
Unless the state makes some omnibus decision on another process.
All right, so we got to appropriate those through town meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
I have two non-fiscal ones. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, that was.
Can we stand there for a second? So we've got one slug in the door, right? So we're going to appropriate that slug and not the whole thing, right? It's the slug.
Right, so, well, so,
Yeah.
well, I think we'll
But we're not doing the
appropriate the
whole
whole,
sum,
well,
the
it depends on, we're still waiting on guidance on if you have to be specific about what it goes to. And I think I've been tasked with meeting with our finance team to figure out what kind of mechanism are we gonna use for this, so that, because the money doesn't run out at the end of the year, so we're gonna put it in its own warrant article like we do for,
So you're in charge of this. You're going to lead us as far as what
Yeah.
we can and can't do. Okay,
Yeah.
so.
So
all right,
working on it.
So designate.
Yeah.
And you keep Sarah Castle. I
Yes.
covered, you know, that.
Yeah,
so just
I'm
keep
on-
her
yeah.
posted so
Just
she
been
knows
meeting
what's
with the chiefs and with Heather
And with-
Alker and yeah.
yeah,
All right, so, okay, opioid settlement number one.
yeah,
Next.
that's all I have.
Okay,
I
Lisa.
have two, potential. In having a conversation with Lori Lavoli in the last month or so, she mentioned there's some things in the downtown district that might need to be corrected. So I'd like to work those things out with her potentially, but to put a placeholder for revisions. And then I would also like to ask historical if there's any changes they want to make to the demolition delay bylaw after their meetings with Jay Telenet. So those are just two potential placeholders that may come to nothing, or there may be some changes. Those were the two I had. Thank you.
What do you think about, I mean, this is not ours, it's planning board's call, but are they going to bring back the two articles that?
I would assume so, based on, you know, their discussions they've had. I would imagine so.
Both of them?
Yes. As a
Um,
placeholder, I would say yes.
Sam?
placeholder for National Grid property.
Okay. That's it?
You can't tell me you didn't see that coming. He held back as long as he could.
I'm many things, but persistence is one.
I know Mr. Stivers for a long time, and yes, persistence is definitely a catch described.
My
It's a good thing. It's a good
character
thing.
flaws, main character.
Okay, Andrew.
So I have two. One is we should have a placeholder for the warrant article that Dorian Jasinski had suggested on behalf of Shopsy about transfer of funds into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And this is really just a kind of vague idea at this point, but is a placeholder for potential article regarding the conditions to issue a special permit for an accessory apartment. And it kind of falls a little bit under the select board goal of diversity in housing. I had a very general conversation with Mimi Luttrell, because I don't think it makes sense for the select board to do anything that's related to zoning without at least, letting the, and I think there was some interest in maybe hearing what we might have to say. There's a rule in the current zoning bylaw that the total cumulative number of accessory apartments permitted by the ZBA since January 1979 shall at no time exceed 5% of the total number of one-family homes in Southborough at the beginning of the year in which the application is filed, etc. So it's basically, it's a provision which is more restrictive of accessory apartments, and the trend generally has been to make it easier to have, by accessory apartments, I mean, the so-called in-law apartments. To just study this and see if there's any consensus around modernizing it. It is something that maybe is more of like a, if we are going to regularize the practice of having a fall town meeting, it is maybe more of like a, it's kind of straddles there between an annual town meeting and a special fall town meeting, if we're going to kind of prioritize zoning and land use things on a fall town meeting.
Yeah, I did look at that when I was in zoning board, and we were way under that limit.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting, we're way under the limit technically, but allegedly, from several building inspectors over the years, I've been told that there are a lot of those apartments
Yes,
out there
there
that
are.
actually aren't permitted.
Right.
So we don't know exactly how many are out there. So we don't quite know where we are, but I think clarifying that would certainly be helpful.
And it's my understanding that those apartments count as affordable units as far as
Not-
our numerator?
No, not without some question. There are a bunch of constraints around them.
Okay,
So
so they
they
could
can,
count.
they
They
could
might
count under certain circumstances, that's right. But it's not a given, but with working at it.
Do we have
could probably
56
get
of them out there that
No.
are not
I
counted?
don't think so.
Good
They
try.
could count, yeah. You have others?
No.
That triggers a couple other thoughts if I may. One is, in terms of the MBTA zoning thing, we have some time to do that. On the other hand, it seems to be getting something in the pipeline for what we're going to do with that is worthwhile with the planning board, trying to figure out, is there something we could or should do for next spring? I don't think we absolutely need to have it, but it would be good to at least start thinking about that. And the second one is,
Can I just add on your first one? I think Shopsy and Planning Board are going to be having a joint meeting.
On the
on-
7th,
Okay,
so,
When?
okay.
on the 7th.
Monday.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if you were aware of that.
And that's on the agenda?
Their agenda.
MBTA zoning.
Yep. Yep, they're having a joint meeting to
Good.
discuss it.
So.
But our Shopsy representative is going to keep us posted, right, as far as what we need to know.
Exactly. So, but again, keeping that sort of on the radar would be helpful. If there's something we can do in the near term to begin to prep for whatever's going to happen there. Because second thing, a topic that I've heard discussed for a long time on the personnel board in various ways is thinking about taking the SAP out of the warrant and basicking making it the policy, if you will. And I've heard some interesting arguments around that, so it may be worth checking with the chairperson on the board to see if they want
Yeah, and I know that there have been discussions since I've been here, and it's gone back and forth. There's been varying views of that. I think that some members of personnel board have been having a conversation with Labor Council, with Kate Federoff.
Yep.
There are some things that you'll need to leave in a bylaw.
Right.
And then other things, because it currently exists in the SAP, that the personnel board can promulgate rules and regulations consistent with what the guidelines that are given in the bylaw. But because personnel is so fluid and dynamic, we can't just wait every 12 months or every 6 or 7 months to make a change.
Right.
It becomes difficult. So the question is, to your point, Mr. Stivers, is how big of a bite do you take?
Yeah.
How much do you, how much change do you want to do?
And people have to have done that one in other towns, so there got to be some models out there.
I mean, just for example, the town of Foxborough, Vanessa, keep me honest, it's, their bylaw is about 2.5 pages, 3 pages.
Yeah.
And it basically prescribes, here's who's responsible for what, And, generally that, the personnel board is responsible for these things and promulgates rules and regulations in accordance with that.
And again, that's, I guess, primarily the bailiwick of the personnel board. On the other hand, I've heard that discussed. I'm, I guess, interested in the argument that more flexibility would be great there. I don't have a specific plan for what that means. On the other hand, it seems to me having that conversation and at least beginning that process is a productive.
I think the intention is something may come forward, so I don't think it's bad to have a placeholder for it. I think, the question is how big of a bite,
Right.
they want to look at.
Another one, maybe it's just too obvious, but would be approval of the lens pump with St. Luke's.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I left that one.
Wow,
St.
Andrew.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I actually didn't even have that on my list. My gosh. But sticking on the personnel one for me, this is really, I've never heard this discussion before. So I've always thought that was it's a terrible article as far, because, there's so, it's so full of detail and, it's so hard to explain. And then especially when you get to the one where they're trying to, expand the ranges of salaries, when you're doing all that at once.
Yeah.
I've always thought it's a horrible thing to do at town meeting. So I would love to entertain maybe doing it in a more efficient way. That's more effective and efficient. So.
Well, even efficient and effective, as Mark said, things are fluid during the year, and so you've got an opportunity to hire
But
somebody.
you've got a board that deals with this all year, it prepares all this, and they've lived it, they understand it.
Yeah.
And you come to town meeting and a lot of people, they've just opened up their warrant, they try, and to get your head around this
I know.
in a short period of time,
It is.
it's very difficult. It's challenging, and so most people, whether it was Steve Morreale or Betsy Rosenblum or whoever would stand up and give the presentation, there's usually not a lot of comments.
That's right.
In the time I've been here, I can think of two.
Well, I would argue that there have been personnel board members who have not understood it very well. So, it is complex.
Yeah.
And again, to me, the real issue is flexibility in terms of hiring. If job opportunities come up, you don't have to wait 9 months for a town meeting to get the right pay grade and job definition, et cetera, et cetera. And you got to be careful about that. You don't want to open it up to anything can happen.
Right.
I got to believe that the current board, I think, is very skilled, and I think they could come up with some good suggestions about how much of the right to take.
I mean, there is a clause in the bylaw that currently allows the board to establish a new position.
Yeah.
And then have it ratified retroactively
Later,
at town meeting. And I really don't think that the personnel board has ever felt comfortable.
Yeah.
So we're going to establish this position, potentially hire a person.
We discussed this with the IT.
And it's got to be ratified.
IT.
Well, and again, you remember the IT process. So again, it's trying to find that flexibility to be able, and Ms. Hale will tell you, we're in an extremely challenging labor market. So I think we need to be able to be responsive and be able to be reactive.
Well, and the public health director, all that stuff, again, is a stressful process for many people.
Yeah.
So,
All right, so
And IMA, Hopkinton.
yeah, so put that, yeah, absolutely. And then increasing the CPA surtax from 1 to 3%.
And I have one more tree maintenance article.
Good one.
Where's you mean for the next slug of, like an expenditure for the next?
Yeah, for more than that. To
catch up.
essentially support all the funds needed for maintenance of trees going forward.
Because the amount that was approved at the fall town meeting, that's just based on, what was the number I heard, like?
120.
That's just this amount. It doesn't include
In a
replacing
particular
trees.
area.
Right.
So maybe you want to take a look at, you've got your for facilities, your annual
Yeah.
maintenance fund and how that's used and everything. Maybe you want to start looking at having we come up with an amount that everybody agrees is the amount that we should be funding this article with every year.
Yeah, and so I've been talking to Ms. Luttrell about this, so I sent her some draft wording that she has, and we're looking at the last 5 years of data and trying to think of everything that could go into this and working on estimates.
Well, the alternative is just to make sure we've got a good number in the annual budget. So,
Yeah.
articles are different than
Or a
budgets. So I
budget
think we
line.
talk about it.
I think one of the challenges with doing the operating budget is funding new trees and how we move forward with that. So
Buying new trees, planting new trees.
planting new trees and where they're going to go.
Yeah.
And having that roll over year over year, right? So,
Well, that's to me the only difference, you know, you still want
Right.
to do the same, you can do the same thing, you just don't have, you know, the operating budget doesn't roll over and the
Right.
warrant article stays open.
well, and I think depending on when you want to plant the trees, that's where you run into issues with fiscal years turning over.
All right, so I'm open. Okay. All right, so that's a pretty good list.
A related one to that one, thank you, James, is
You're
that
welcome.
Lisa and I have been talking with about the ADA
Yes.
compliance thing. And I guess, obviously, there's a long list of projects there, but it seems like having some sort of a reliable funding source to say that there is $100,000 a year, you put the number.
For ADA.
For ongoing ADA compliance, and then there's some other special things, like one of the big needs, I think, is the recreational fields, and that's not
Yeah.
gonna be a small budget item, but that's where you got a lot of public access issues.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're proposing possibly a separate warrant article like this for ADA stuff, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but again, that's sort of, I'm hybrid on it in the sense that you could do it with a simple budget line item, to say we're gonna fund it this way, but to Chelsea's point, it is maybe less permanent than some sort of date.
Well, the rationale for doing the facilities, the 100K, is that, number one, he doesn't know what he's gonna need it for, right? The number, he has no idea what's gonna break, right, for the year, so he needs a pool of money to do that. It just made sense to do it because we know we gotta do it every year. It's in it. So, you know, there's not that much difference between doing these two ways, but okay, so we're increasing the budget quite a bit already. Select board?
No, we're laying out a series of things we want to consider.
Yep, yep. But
But we'll reduce our operating budget to. So you have some money.
So we take it out of operating budget.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
yeah.
So that-
Well, not, I mean, you're gonna need more in there. Fun, probably.
You gotta have your tree warden and your arborist paid for.
You can't pay for your tree warden stipend though out of that fund.
That's the arborist.
We have to have a
that can
stipend.
Paid for, he or she
Yes.
paid for. All
That's
right,
my
so
budget.
this sounds like a good list to start out with.
Now, are we gonna, you're gonna put the call out, Mr. Purple, to departments?
Yes,
and
departments,
so it
boards,
may
committees.
Increase substantially, hopefully not, but.
Is someone got to reach out to the personnel board, Mark, as the personnel officer?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're already personnel
Directors.
They're,
Are we talking commission or committee?
they are, they're already well aware. And again, they're the other thing, since we're talking about money, didn't want to talk about money, but we're talking about money. Personnel board is having a special meeting tomorrow. The pay and class study has been completed. The consultant's going to be presenting. It's a one-item agenda. They'll be presenting it to the personnel board. And then obviously employees will have a chance, to come in and ask questions and comment and everything. So it should be a very good discussion. But there are going to be some monetary things, I think, that come out of that that the personnel board will look to bring forward. I don't know what they'll be. I don't know the extent of them, but this happened with the last paying class. If you remember, there were certain people who were really out of whack that had to be brought back into adjustment. It was over $46,000 roughly, I think, of adjustments that needed to be made to certain positions. And I think that there may be that again. And to what degree, we'll have to wait and see, but just putting it on your radar that I think there's going to be that type of request coming from personnel board as well.
Trying to think of what fits within the four corners of this line item or. No, I don't think it does. Never mind. I'll ask you offline.
It's a good start. I mean,
So if anybody thinks of something after the meeting, I'll just add it to the list. All right, anything else? Public comment, do we be public left?
We have
Two
Mr.
people
Miller.
left.
Mr. Miller?
Yep.
Eh,
He
does
doesn't,
raise-
no, he doesn't have his hand up, but he's there.
And
No,
is
so-
our- Okay, so, motion to adjourn,
So move.
Second.
all in favor? All right.